Chapter 705. He came quickly, Pang Xiao said with a smile. She looked back at Qin Yining and asked, "Do you want to watch a good show? We've already watched one. Wouldn't it be a pity if we didn't continue to watch?" Qin Yining said with a smile, "But I don't think Magistrate Yang is innocent. Your Majesty ordered the soldiers to raise their own salaries. As a magistrate, how could he not know about the salary? Presumably, he was aware of Lu Zhang's methods, and he should have heard of the exact number of people involved. But he kept silent and ignored it. He was waiting for someone to take the blame for him to come to the old capital so that he could remove himself from the blame." Qin Yining thought about what Magistrate Yang had done and how he had changed from arrogance to deference. She also thought about the beautiful girl in men's clothing that she saw when she went to the Yang family. Some thoughts flashed through her mind, but she didn't grasp them. Seeing her slow down, Pang Xiao asked, "Do you have any ideas?" Qin Yining shook her head and said, "Nothing." "Where do you want to see Magistrate Yang?" "Let's go to the front hall. There's a screen there." Qin Yining laughed again and followed Pang Xiao to the front hall. Pang Xiao personally placed a chair behind the screen, and then laid down a thick cushion. He even took off the cloak on his shoulders and wrapped it around her body. Then she walked to the middle of the hall and said, "Let Magistrate Yang in." "Yes." Outside the hall, Guzi immediately asked someone to invite Magistrate Yang in. Magistrate Yang's face was red and he was so angry that he frowned. He felt as if he was being roasted. Waiting outside Qin's mansion didn't calm him down. Instead, it made him even angrier. Even though Pang Zhishi was the army's commander-in-chief and the famous god of war Wang Yi, in Magistrate Yang's eyes, he was just a guy in a worrisome situation. He was already feared by your Majesty and was full of openings, yet he still didn't know how to behave himself and continued to show off in the old capital. Wasn't he afraid that your Majesty would take him down if I reported him? It was precisely because of this confidence that Magistrate Yang despised Pang Xiao even more. His confidence in this trip also increased. Therefore, when the servants came to lead him to the front hall, Magistrate Yang's back was straight and he was suppressing his anger. His footsteps were so forceful that it was as if he wanted to crush the green bricks on the ground to vent his anger. "Wang Yi, Magistrate Yang has arrived." Guzi sent a message inside and then lifted the curtain for Magistrate Yang with a big smile. When Magistrate Yang saw Pang Xiao sitting lazily at the head of the table and drinking tea, he did not even greet him. Instead, he directly questioned, how could Wang Yi be so treacherous? How dare he set me up like this? Pang Xiao did not seem to notice Magistrate Yang's anger. He stood up with a smile and said, "Hey, Magistrate Yang, please have a seat. Don't be angry. Anger is harmful to your health." Qin Yining, who was behind the screen, looked out through the gaps of the carved flowers and saw Magistrate Yang's face turn even redder. It made people wonder if he would faint in the blink of an eye. Magistrate Yang was furious. He suppressed his anger and sat down in the guest seat. When he saw the servant serving tea, he took a sip. Unexpectedly, the tea in his mouth was boiling hot. It was so painful that he spat the tea back into the teacup. He wanted to fan his tongue to cool it down, but he had to put on airs because of his status. He could only keep a straight face and endure it. Pang Xiao did not seem to notice Magistrate Yang's embarrassment. He hurriedly asked with concern, "Is the tea too hot? How can these idiots do their jobs?" Pang Xiao reprimanded the servants outside. The servants hurriedly knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Magistrate Yang was not in the mood to pay attention to this. He waved his hand and said, "It's okay." Then he said, "I don't know Wang Yi and have never offended each other. Why does Wang Yi want to frame me like this today?" "What frame?" Pang Xiao was shocked and said, "Is there a misunderstanding, Magistrate Yang?" When has this king ever framed you? Then what does Wang Yi mean? Today, you actually threw such a difficult problem at me in front of so many people. Isn't that framing me? Pang Xiao said helplessly. Magistrate Yang, are you mistaken? Shouldn't you be responsible for the preparation of the army's salary? His words made Magistrate Yang speechless. When Your Majesty gave the order to raise the salary, he had already handed the issue of the general's salary to the local finance department. But Wang Yi, don't forget that there is no tax in the old capital now. Hey, what can I do? The war in the north is tense. Your Majesty is now busy fighting the Tatars. He can't help the south and can't do anything. Since we are here to watch and receive the salary of the king, shouldn't we share the king's burden? You! Magistrate Yang said angrily. Wang Yi, don't talk nonsense. You know that I'm not talking about this. Wang Yi is now the Grand Marshal. You are now in charge of the entire army. Do you still want me to prepare the salary? What's more, the army previously owed a huge sum of 3 million taels of silver. I didn't borrow the money. Why should I pay it back now? If you are not framing me, then what is? Hey, so Magistrate Yang also thinks that this is a scam. Pang Xiao spread his hands and said helplessly, so this is how Sitong number is used to frame this king. Magistrate Yang was so angry that his face turned purple. His lips trembled and he couldn't say anything for a long time. So you were framed, so you came to frame me. Pang Xiao shook his head and sighed. He said that he was helpless and even leaned over to help him. Don't be angry, Magistrate Yang. Today, in front of the people, you've already taken responsibility for this. Even if you don't think about the soldiers, you have to think about your own reputation. You have already agreed to pay back the 3 million taels of silver. If you quit now, who knows what the people outside will say about you? When did I agree? You were the one who forced me to do so. Pang Xiao pretended to be deep in thought. Then he smiled and said, why don't you go and look for the manager of Sitong number? Magistrate Yang should be familiar with the manager of Sitong number, right? As soon as he said this, Qin Yining leaned forward from behind the screen and carefully looked at Magistrate Yang's expression. Magistrate Yang seemed to be shocked. In the blink of an eye, he came back to his senses and said, why do you say this? Pang Xiao smiled and said, don't be nervous, Magistrate Yang. This king is just speculating. You are a magistrate. You should know how many merchants there are and what they do, right? If you really don't know, then isn't it a dereliction of duty? I believe that with Magistrate Yang's loyalty to your Majesty, you will never allow this kind of thing to happen. Moreover, with Magistrate Yang's talent, he will not commit such a dereliction of duty. Then Magistrate Yang must know everything about Sitong number. That's why he acquiesced the soldiers to borrow money from Sitong number. This king is new here and is not familiar with the people of Sitong number. But you are different. Why don't you make an exception for Sitong number and pay back the money a few years later when the government is stable and the treasury is abundant? Magistrate Yang's hands were trembling with anger. What a good Prince Zhongshuan. He was actually waiting for him here. Magistrate Yang couldn't calm down for a moment. He was a little worried, but he suppressed his worries. He was even more disgusted and angry with Pang Xiao. He gritted his teeth and said, how can I know the people of Sitong number? Wang Yi, don't take it for granted. You don't know. This king doesn't think so. Pang Xiao shook his head regretfully. Then this king has no other choice. We still have to rely on Magistrate Yang to pay back the money. This king can rest assured with your help. Magistrate Yang suddenly stood up and stared at Pang Xiao angrily. If it's not me who owes the money, why should I pay it back? Pang Xiao also lost the patience to tease a child. He slowly stood up and said lazily, this king also wants to ask, if it's not this king who owes the money, why should this king pay it back? Magistrate Yang, why don't you go back and help this king? Asked the shopkeeper of Sitong number. Magistrate Yang's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show any expression on his face. He just said angrily, if I have to be treated like this as a magistrate, then I don't want to be a magistrate anymore. He was a local magistrate. His appointment wasn't decided by a little prince. If he insisted on not doing it, Pang Shao couldn't do anything to him. If the news spread, he wouldn't be able to explain it to your majesty. Therefore, Magistrate Yang was very confident in his move. He was waiting to see how Pang Shao would yield. At that time, he would throw the pressure of 3 million taels of silver back to Pang Shao. He wanted to see how the legendary god of war, Wang Yi, could pay back the debt. However, what Magistrate Yang didn't expect was that Pang Shao agreed without hesitation. Well, since Magistrate Yang feels that it's so difficult to do your job, this king won't force you. Magistrate Yang, why don't you hand over your official seal? This king will find a way to explain it to you clearly. Magistrate Yang was stunned on the spot. Don't want to be a magistrate anymore. He had worked hard for so many years and finally made a name for himself. He had become a magistrate and accumulated a network of contacts. Was he going to give up the power he had worked so hard to obtain because of such a small matter? Not to mention the power, the people behind him alone wouldn't forgive him for what he did. Pang Shao walked to Magistrate Yang with a smile and said, "Isn't Magistrate Yang too surprised? Do you want this king to send someone to get your official seal? Then we won't have to trouble your family." Magistrate Yang's eyelids twitched. After a long while, he squeezed out a sentence, "No need." Pang Shao couldn't help but laugh as he listened to his stone-like voice. That's right. This king knows that Magistrate Yang is a good official who can take responsibility. No matter who owes the debt, as long as it comes to Magistrate Yang, he can think of a solution on the spot. Since Magistrate Yang doesn't want to hand over your official seal and wants to continue to be a magistrate, isn't it reasonable for Magistrate Yang to do some things to share your majesty's burden? Magistrate Yang gritted his teeth and said, "Of course." "Good, straightforward." Pang Shao clapped his hands and said with a smile, "In that case, Magistrate Yang, please be careful and pay back the large sum of money as soon as possible. This king will wait for your good news in the mansion." Good news? Magistrate Yang curled his lips. Pang Shao simply said goodbye and strode away without looking back. Pang Shao didn't forget to sigh at this time. Magistrate Yang is really devoted to the people. Now you have to shoulder such a difficult burden by yourself. You are in such a hurry to go back and think of a solution. What a rare good official. Magistrate Yang, who was about to walk out of the door, staggered. It took all his willpower not to quarrel with Pang Shao again. Chapter 706. Pang Shao couldn't help but use his slender fingers to gently scratch Qin Yining's nose. How am I being thick-skinned? I'm just giving him a taste of his own medicine. So you're saying that Wang Yi also thinks that there's something wrong with this person? Qin Yining tilted her head to look at him. The tassel beads behind her head swayed slightly, giving off a gentle glow. You think so too? Qin Yining nodded and stood on her tiptoes to drape a cloak over Pang Shao. Even if he's not the instigator, this matter is definitely related to him. When you were probing him just now, I saw very clearly that his relationship with Sitong number is definitely not simple. Moreover, Qin Yining's fair hands tugged at the collar of the cloak on both sides. She slowly lowered her tiptoes and muttered, I keep feeling that there's something wrong with that Miss Chiu. Magistrate Yang's attitude towards Miss Chiu doesn't seem like he's treating her as a nephew, but as an equal. Pang Shao lowered his eyes to look at her. From top to bottom, he could see her long eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings, casting a small fan-like shadow on her fair face. Her hands were clutching his collar. Because she was deep in thought, she didn't notice that they were standing like this, as if she was nestled in his arms. Pang Xiao sighed in satisfaction and slowly leaned over to embrace her in his arms. His arms circled her soft and slender body, and his breath was filled with the faint fragrance of her body. Qin Yining was stunned at first, then she smiled and rubbed against his arms like a coquettish kitten. "What's wrong, Dai Fu?" She used a joking tone to call him by his nickname. That kind of soft and itchy feeling simply reached his heart. Pang Xiao's voice was low and hoarse, as if the lowest sound of a zither was vibrating. "That's great. It's great that you're by my side." Qin Yining's eyes turned into crescents as he smiled and buried his face in his chest. She was immersed in her unique aura, and her muffled voice sounded, "I'm also very happy to be able to stay by your side. It's a pity that you won't be staying at home for long. In a few days, you'll have to return to the military camp." Pang Xiao sighed and said nothing. If he could, he wished that he could never be separated from Qin Yining and his two children. However, the current situation did not allow it. "It's all right, it'll be fine soon. After everything is settled, we will have plenty of time to spend together. When we're both old, we still have to stick together. At that time, you might get tired of looking at my old face." "That won't happen. People say that men are like flowers when they're 41, while women are like tofu dregs when they're 40. When I'm too old to look at, you'll have to look for a young and beautiful one." "Silly girl, how old would I be if I waited for you to be 40? Pang Xiao hugged her waist and laughed. "I was worried that you would think I was old." Qin Yining thought about it and chuckled. The two of them were really. They hadn't even solved the problem at hand. They were still thinking so far ahead. If they couldn't pass this problem, they might not even be 40 years old. Although Li Qitian was busy with Taitan's matter, he had been keeping an eye on Pang Xiao. If something went wrong with the debt of Sitong Bank this time, it was equivalent to giving Li Qitian something that could be used against them. At that time, it was unknown how Li Qitian would deal with them. Qin Yining became alert and began to analyze the situation. She and Pang Xiao could not fail. Because they still had their families behind them. Moreover, the two children were still young and needed to grow up steadily. They could not let the two little guys live in fear with them. Now that we've handed over the repayment to Magistrate Yang, he'll naturally communicate with Sitong Bank. If he can't, he'll think of other ways to solve the problem. However, you still have another problem. It's almost time to pay your salary. We definitely won't be able to borrow money from Sitong Bank, but this salary is a responsibility that you, as the Grand Marshal, can't avoid. Actually, I suspect that Sitong Bank has a close relationship with the County King of Yen. Perhaps the County King of Yen had instructed the people at the four-way shop to dig a hole for you to jump into. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao held hands as they walked around the screen and out the back door. They walked along the hand-folding veranda towards the back of the residence. The servants knew that their masters had something to talk about and consciously retreated about 10 feet away from them. Pang Xiao said, "I think so too. Gu Shixiang's methods are not to be underestimated. But regarding the salary, I've already thought of a way." "Oh. What is it?" Qin Yining stopped and looked up at him curiously. Pang Xiao lowered his eyes and leaned close to her ear. He narrowed his almond-shaped eyes and whispered a few words into her ear. Qin Yining listened with widened eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered. After a while, she asked, "Is this feasible?" "It's feasible. Why wouldn't it be feasible?" Pang Xiao said with a smile, "I'm already used to shamelessly acting shamelessly. It's just that I feel sorry for you and the child, and I have to keep you at home. I feel very guilty that I can't be by your side." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Don't say that. You're not going out to play. You're going out to do something serious. You're thinking about the safety of our family. What's there to feel guilty about? Don't worry. I have enough people around me. I can take care of things at home. You just have to be at ease and do what you need to do. She had always been like this. She could always let him do what he wanted to do without any worries. However, it was because of her thoughtfulness that Pang Xiao felt even more sorry for her. It was because of this that he felt even more sorry and guilty. Pang Xiao hugged her tightly in his arms without a trace of affection. A kiss landed on her forehead. She was a good girl who deserved to be cherished. How fortunate was he to be able to meet her in this life. Pang Xiao returned to his room to accompany Qin Yining and the child for a while. Then, he went to the outer courtyard to see Mu Jinghu. These days, Mu Jinghu was not at home except for New Year's Eve and the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. Pang Xiao did not know what he was doing, and did not want to ask. He only knew that Mu Jinghu was one of the Tianji's men. He also knew that Mu Jinghu's sudden appearance in the old capital was probably because the Tianji had instructed him to do something. However, Pang Xiao also believed in Mu Jinghu's character. When they were in the Taiden, Mu Jinghu could go against the Tianji's wishes to save Qin Yining. He even told him that Qin Yining was still alive. From that moment on, he believed that Mu Jinghu would never approach them with the intention of harming them. Blockhead, how long can you stay in the old capital? Under the dim yellow light, Pang Xiao poured a cup of tea for Mu Jinghu. Mu Jinghu picked up the teacup and took a sip. He said, I also don't know how long I will stay. When I came, Marshal Uncle didn't give me any instructions. He only said that there was a commotion in the south and told me to come and take a look. Pang Xiao nodded. He did not doubt Mu Jinghu's words at all. If you're not in a hurry to leave, help me take care of the house. I have to go to the military camp again tomorrow. Sister Yi is taking care of the 2 children at home. I really can't rest assured. Although I also left some guards behind, I'm always afraid that something will happen like that year. Now Sister Yi not only doesn't have any family to accompany her, but she also has to take care of the 2 children. It's really too hard. Mu Jinghu nodded without hesitation. All right, then I'll go out less and take care of the house more. Don't worry and go do your own things. Don't worry about the house. Pang Xiao patted Mu Jinghu's shoulder and said with a smile, Good brother. When I'm done with my work, I'll look for you to have a drink. Mu Jinghu said with some disbelief, What if you don't look for me to have a drink? Pang Xiao was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed loudly and said, Then you can call me by my nickname. How about it? Bashful Fox. Mu Jinghu blinked and called out tentatively. Pang Xiao nodded happily. Up to you. Call me whatever you want. He stood up and bowed solemnly to Mu Jinghu. Blockhead, please. Mu Jinghu seemed to be shocked by Pang Xiao's sudden bow. He quickly stood up and returned the bow. You're welcome. It's just a small matter. Anyway, I don't have much to do in the old capital. If it was someone else, they would probably take the opportunity to brag about their achievements. However, Mu Jinghu was always so honest. He would never flaunt his abilities and would never learn to take advantage of the situation to do favors. With Mu Jinghu's promise, Pang Xiao could finally return to the army camp without worry. Han Gu and Zhao Gu had just become familiar with Pang Xiao when their father had to leave again. The 2 children hugged Pang Xiao's neck and cried. However, after Pang Xiao left, Qin Yining played with them for a while and they forgot about their father. Qin Yining arranged for Lu Dahan to continue giving out porridge. He also ordered Bing Tang to go to the Zhao family to treat the great philanthropist Qian in the eyes of the people. When Bing Tang returned, he said with a smile, Wang Fei, don't worry. Leader Zhao's injuries are all superficial. He has practiced internal martial arts and his body is very good. After some treatment, he will recover in a few days. Qin Yining heard this and gave a big sigh of relief. It was good that Zhao Wanjin was safe and sound. Otherwise, she would not be at ease. Qin Yining started to take care of her local business. When she first came to the old capital, the shopkeeper she left behind put on airs and refused to see her. Until now, she still had not seen him. After resolving her grandmother's crisis, she could free up her hands to take care of the business. Pang Shao returned to the army camp and stayed for 7 or 8 days. After the 15th day of the first month, people started to spread rumors in private. They said that Prince Zhongshuan did not have money to pay everyone. Isn't fighting a war just eating a full meal? Do we have to work ourselves to death if we don't get paid? Prince Zhongshuan, we've fought together before. You should understand the difficulties of us poor people. My wife and old mother are still waiting for money to eat. We almost don't have enough to eat. This kind of discussion was like a tidal wave. In just 2 days, it spread throughout the army camp. When everyone talked about this matter, they were filled with righteous indignation. It was obvious that they felt very unjust. Wang Yi, rumors are spreading everywhere in the army camp. I'm afraid the situation is not good, Xia Yu said worriedly. I'm afraid that things will develop to a certain extent and we won't be able to control the situation. Su Weiji also said, although Wang Yi has a plan, this old man still feels that this method is a bit risky. Although if it succeeds, it will completely solve our current predicament. If it fails, it might cause a mutiny. The consequences will be unimaginable. Your Highness, you have to be careful. Pang Shao smiled reassuringly at the 2 loyal aides and said, the 2 of you do not need to worry. This king deliberately spread the rumors outside. What? Pang Shao deliberately spread such unfavorable rumors about him. Xia Yu and Su Weiji were shocked and fell silent. But soon, the 2 of them understood. Chapter 707. Pang Shao nodded and said with a smile, you 2 know me best. Xia Yu and Su Weiji were relieved when they saw that Pang Shao had a card up his sleeve. Pang Shao deliberately allowed all kinds of rumors and slanders to fester in the barracks. In just one night, half of the people in the barracks were talking about this. There were even some people who were instigated by someone other than Pang Shao to spread the word that they might not receive any pay for the next year. Everyone was in a state of panic, and the barracks were full of impetuosity. Especially when it was time to distribute food and pay, Pang Shao did not make a move. These worried people finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Early in the morning, light snow floated down from the sky. Pang Shao had just finished washing up when Huzi strode into the tent. Wang Yi, those bastards outside are making a ruckus. Pang Shao snorted and threw the handkerchief in his hand into the wooden basin. He put on his cloak and said, let's go out and take a look. As they strode out of the tent, the noise in the distance entered their ears. Pang Shao and Huzi followed the sound. The closer they got, the louder the noise became. When they arrived at the drill ground, they saw that there were at least 2,000 to 3,000 people gathered in one place. The noise was so loud that it did not seem like they were in a military drill ground, but more like they were in a market. Pang Shao slowly walked forward with his hands crossed. In the crowd, someone shouted, "Stop talking, Wang Yi is here." The crowd was silent for a moment, but then it started to clamor again. Someone asked loudly, "Wang Yi, we owe our pay for a month. Our wives and children are waiting for food. When will we get paid?" "That's right, Wang Yi. What's the point of being a soldier? Isn't it just to earn money? When will Wang Yi pay us? We want to be paid. We want to eat." One person in the group raised his fist and roared. Immediately, the people around him followed suit and roared. The men's roars were so loud that it shook the mountains and the earth. The people who were targeted by the crowd could feel the resentment that was almost tangible. Pang Shao let these people shout for a while. When their voices died down, he said, "This king understands how brothers feel. This king has been a soldier for 10 years. He ate and lived with the soldiers in the barracks. How can he not understand how they feel? Speaking of money, we are indeed tight right now. Magistrate Yang is not in a hurry to return the money he borrowed from Lu Zhang. But since everyone is following this king can't let everyone work for nothing." Pang Shao raised his voice, raised SSS ears back. Good. Good. Among the crowd, there were only a few who were incited to stir up trouble. Most of the people gathered together for the sake of the food. Moreover, most of the people in the army had fought with Pang Shao and the Tiger Army in the Dian. They still remembered Pang Zhao's superb command of the troops and how he led the troops in front of the two armies. Therefore, when Pang Shao called for help, this group of people agreed. Why were they doing this? Of course it was for the money. Since Wang Yi had a way to lead them to get the money, they just had to follow Wang Yi. There was nothing wrong with that. The people in the crowd couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. They had worked so hard, but it was all ruined by Prince Zhongshuan's words. Someone in the crowd raised his voice again. We don't believe it. Wang Yi can't be thinking of pacifying us now and then going back on his word. That's right. Unless Wang Yi takes out the money now, we won't believe it. Pang Shao looked at the people who were shouting with a faint smile. Huzi also looked at them and silently memorized their faces. Pang Shao said, "Brothers, this king can understand if you don't believe it right now. In the end, it's just empty talk without any evidence. It's not enough to win your trust. However, I'm sure the brothers who fought with me know what kind of person Pang Shao is. That Pang Zhao's spittle is a nail in the coffin. When he said he would lead everyone to get the money, he meant it." Pang Shao raised his money and walked into the crowd. He said, "Everyone knows that there is a war in the north, right? The Dezhou dynasty was founded not long ago. After many years of war, the state treasury is completely empty. To put it bluntly, even a mouse would come out crying after going in." Ha! The crowd burst into laughter. The tense atmosphere immediately eased. Pang Shao said, "That's why it's not easy for us to count on the money in the state treasury. Lu Zhang had previously borrowed a large sum of money from the four-way shop, but he still doesn't have the ability to pay it back. Magistrate Yang is in a terrible fix, and the four-way shop won't lend us any money to pay our salaries." Therefore, Ben Wang thought about it and thought of a way to make a lot of money. "Wang Yi, what brilliant idea do you have? Please don't hesitate to tell us." Pang Shao smiled. "It's not a brilliant idea. This king is the same as everyone else. We are all uncouth, but our fists are tough. This king went out for a stroll in the past few days and found that there are many mountain peaks nearby. There are many bandits living on the mountain peaks, and who knows how many commoners they have harmed. They have a lot of money in their mountain strongholds. This king plans to take some people out to beat them up and teach those bastards a lesson. They have so much strength, but they don't join the army to protect the country. Instead, they shamelessly bully the weak. They're really a disgrace to all men." Pang Shao spat with righteous indignation as he spoke. Many men were stimulated by Pang Zhao's words. They were originally soldiers, and soldiers naturally knew how to fight. They had not been able to fight for a long time, so they had to train in the barracks. Ever since Wang Yi became the Grand Marshal, the content of their training became more varied, and they were tired after a day. They were equally tired, but they had to face the fact that they had no pay. They might as well follow Wang Yi to exterminate the bandits and rob him of his money. Thinking of this, everyone cheered. Good, let's fucking do it. There were less than 3,000 people present, but more than 1,000 people agreed with Pang Zhao's decision. However, there were still a large number of people who hesitated and did not speak. They felt that it was right and proper for soldiers to earn money. Why should they do extra work? Among them, there were even people who were instigated by others who were determined to make things difficult for Pang Zhao. Therefore, these people made different voices and protested. They were determined not to go out to exterminate the bandits. Pang Zhao crossed his arms and looked at them for a while. He smiled and said, "Is there anyone who doesn't want to go?" Someone shouted, "Why should we take the risk and pay for it?" "Why?" Pang Zhao glared at him and said angrily, "Because you are soldiers. Because you have to obey military orders. Could it be that there are foreign enemies invading at this time, and you want to shrink your necks and not move because you are afraid of death?" Pang Zhao's sudden roar startled everyone, and silenced them one after another. Pang Zhao said, "We are called 100,000 brothers in the army. We are stationed here. Can we just watch those bastards who call themselves heroes bully the people around us? Are all of you soldiers just to earn money? Don't you have the courage of a man?" At this point, Pang Zhao did not wait for everyone to react. He said, "Today, the happiest people are all of you present. Those who want to go with this king, gather here early tomorrow morning. Those who don't want to go can choose not to go. But let's make it clear first. After we get the money, we will first take care of the food and pay for the brothers who follow this king. Next, we will take care of the honest brothers who don't want to cause trouble. Last, we will take care of you who jump high and look for trouble, but shrink your necks and hide when you encounter difficulties. Whether there are any leftovers will depend on your own luck." Pang Zhao waved his hand and said, "Disperse. Go back and think about it yourselves." Pang Zhao strode towards the tent. Huzi immediately followed and whispered, "Master, will they all refuse to go with you?" Pang Zhao smiled and said, "They won't. Men die for wealth, and birds die for food. At least half of these troublemakers will go with us." Then he joked, "If too many people go, there won't be enough to share the loot." Huzi thought about it, and it seemed to make sense. He also laughed. The next day, as Pang Zhao expected, there were about 1,000 people gathered on the drill ground. Pang Zhao smiled and said, "Good. This king has already made the list of troublemakers yesterday. There are a total of 2,633 people. But today, there are more than 1,000 people who have withdrawn. Forget it, this king knows who is going and who is not going. Anyway, we have more than 1,000 brothers. We have enough people." As he spoke, he gave the order to set out. Just as Pang Zhao led the crowd to set out, the soldiers who made a ruckus yesterday but did not want to go with him today became nervous. They knew about Pang Zhao's bad temper. They were really afraid that Pang Zhao would come back and settle accounts with them. However, this bandit suppression team, which had less than 1,000 people, was very fortunate to be following behind Pang Zhao. The crowd left the camp and went west for about 20 li. They arrived at a dense forest near the official road. Pang Zhao waved his hand and stopped the troops. "Everyone, set up an ambush here." With Pang Zhao's order, nearly 1,000 people set up an ambush in the forest on both sides of the road in an orderly manner. The weather was clear today, and there was no rain or snow. So it was easy for everyone to set up an ambush. However, this wait lasted for 2 hours. At this time, some people began to become impatient. They said they were going to suppress bandits, but they did not take them to attack any mountain stronghold. Why were they setting up an ambush on the side of the road? Everyone cursed silently, but no one dared to ask Pang Xiao face to face. They all knew how powerful Prince Zhongshuan was. Who dared to touch his reverse scale? Pang Xiao was not worried at all. He held a straw stick in his mouth and carefully observed the movements on the official road. Not long after, Huzi ran over and whispered a few words in his ear. Pang Xiao threw away the straw stick and ordered the people around him. The bandits will pretend to be merchants. They will be transporting treasures back to the mountain stronghold. Tell everyone to pay attention. Only take the goods and do not kill people. All the bandits must be captured alive. Yes. The people around him responded in a low voice and scattered to send the message. After a while, everyone knew about Pang Xiao's strange order. Suppressing bandits, but only taking the goods and not killing people. At this time, on the official road, a caravan was approaching from the outside of the old capital. In front of the caravan was a large flag. The symbol of 4 ports was particularly eye-catching under the sun. Chapter 708. The 4 links had been in business for more than 100 years and had a deep involvement in all kinds of trades. Naturally, they had their own escort company to transport goods. At this time, the group that was traveling on the official road was carrying the banner of the 4 links. Hearing Pang Xiao's order, those men, who had been training with Pang Xiao for the past few days, immediately rushed towards those carts and wooden boxes like fierce tigers coming down from the mountains. While howling, they rushed towards those carts and wooden boxes, one after another. The escorts of the 4 links had been through hundreds of battles. Unfortunately, they did not encounter ordinary brothers, but a group of rough men who only obeyed military orders. These men who were so excited by the sight of the treasure chests that their blood was boiling could only see the carriages and chests. How could they care about anything else? Before the escorts of the 4 links could even open their mouths to say anything, the soldiers had already arrived in front of them. They used their strength to crush the group of escorts to the point that they could not fight back. In the blink of an eye, they were tied up like dumplings. Pang Xiao hugged his shoulders and watched as the group of escorts and workers were stuffed with rags. They were pulled into the forest and tied up against a large tree. The other group went to check the goods on the carriages. Wow! It's silk. There's even porcelain. The crowd cried out in surprise. When the news spread, the 1,000 men who came along soon knew that they had struck gold. Pang Xiao said, "These bandits are quite smart. They actually dare to use the banner of the 4 links when transporting stolen goods. They even dare to impersonate us." Everyone looked at each other. Actually, they all guessed that the 4 links that had been robbed might really be the 4 links. But since Wang Yi was willing to give such an order, he must have his own reasons. Even if something really happened, there would be someone else to take the blame. They were pretending to be noble and virtuous. Did they not want their pay? Therefore, no one questioned it at this time. Pang Xiao had already expected this reaction from the crowd. He was not surprised at all and said, "Come, throw away the banner and transport these goods back to the camp. Since we don't know where these bandits robbed from, we probably won't be able to find out anything even if we ask them. Then, these will be the profits for us brothers to suppress the bandits." Good. Good. Everyone cheered loudly and obeyed the order to drive the carriages back to the barracks. Their enthusiasm was unprecedented. Huzi whispered in Pang Xiao's ear, "Wang Yi, what should we do with these people?" Pang Xiao turned around and looked at the bodyguards and assistants who were tied up tightly. He smiled and said, "Let's go. Ignore them for now." Huzi immediately agreed. Without any doubt or second thoughts, he mounted his horse and left with Pang Xiao, leaving the people of the 4-way pass to whine in despair. There was a 99% chance that they were going to be fed to the wolves. Who would have thought that this group of soldiers would actually be so ruthless? Not only did they snatch away their things, they even left them to fend for themselves. Only Pang Zhishi, that evil spirit, could think of such a way to silence the witnesses without shedding a drop of blood. When Pang Shao and his group returned to the barracks, they immediately attracted everyone's attention. Those who had maintained a wait-and-see attitude and wanted to see if Pang Shao could get the money saw that they had actually driven 6 or 7 carriages back, and each carriage was full of goods. Pang Shao didn't delay any further. He immediately ordered his men to distribute the things they had brought back to the 1,000 men who had gone out today. Their salaries were deducted. The rest of the things were distributed according to the barracks. However, there were a few people in each barracks who didn't receive anything. This was because their names were on Pang Zhao's blacklist. No one would have thought that Pang Zhao would be able to clearly identify the people who caused so much trouble that day. This made those who wanted to fish in troubled waters break out in cold sweat. It seemed that the rumors of Prince Zhongshuan's power were true. If they wanted to cause trouble under his watch, they really had to consider their own power. Seeing that the people around them received silk or porcelain, which was worth more than their wages, and everyone was laughing and talking, those who caused trouble at the beginning could only stare helplessly. They all began to regret. They had clearly taken the lead and did not hesitate to be hated by Prince Zhongshuan. In the end, when it was time to reap the benefits, they chose to retreat. They wished they could slap themselves a few times. Why did they make such a stupid choice? Pang Shao and his group had almost finished distributing the goods. He ordered people to pass on the military order and ordered the 1,000 people who went with him to gather immediately. At this time, the sky was already dark, and everyone held torches in their hands. The military field was bright. Pang Shao slowly walked through the crowd and said loudly, "This king just received a report from the scouts. The bandits kidnapped a large number of civilians. Can our army not do anything about this?" "No, we can't." Although the people did not understand what Pang Shao wanted to do, they had already received their pay today. In their hearts, they had already firmly believed in Wang Yi. Therefore, everyone naturally believed what he said. Pang Shao immediately said, "We are hot-blooded men. If it were not to protect the safety of the people, who would suffer here? Brothers, are you all willing to follow this king to rescue those commoners?" "We are willing to follow Wang Yi." Everyone shouted in unison. "Good." Pang Shao said, "In that case, everyone set off immediately." "Yes." The group of people immediately prepared and left the military camp in an aggressive manner. Those soldiers who did not receive their pay and those who did not follow the prince out at the beginning were envious. They wondered how many benefits they would get this time. Pang Shao led the 1,000 soldiers straight to the small forest where the people were kidnapped. The closer they got, the clearer Huzi's guess became. Seeing that Pang Shao really reined in his horse outside the small forest, Huzi could not help but ask, "Wang Yi, the civilians we are going to rescue, are they the ones we kidnapped today?" "Yes." Pang Shao dismounted and answered without hesitation. Huzi was shocked. He stared dumbfoundedly and allowed the night wind to blow on his face. What was Wang Yi trying to do? Even if he wanted to act out a heroic rescue, he should at least be more careful. At least disguise himself when he kidnapped these people, right? Look at what they were wearing when they kidnapped these people, and what they were wearing when they came to rescue them. Were they going to use their glib tongue to accuse a deer of being a horse? However, Huzi was right. Pang Shao really did plan to do so. He led his men into the forest and released the leaders with his own hands. The warm smile on his face made Pang Zhao's aura seem different. He was a completely different person from the guy who led his men to rob this afternoon. The escort leader of the four-way pass and the shopkeeper who followed the carriage were still confused about the situation. Pang Shao smiled and said, "Sorry for the fright. This king heard that bandits robbed the four-way pass and kidnapped all of you, so he specially brought his men to rescue you." Pang Shao looked into the dark forest and smiled. It seems that this king's military prowess has spread far and wide. The bandits have already fled at the sight of him. Fortunately, this king came in time and none of you were injured. The shopkeeper and the escort leader looked at Pang Shao with astonishment in their eyes. This person was really thick-skinned. He really dared to say that. They were not blind or stupid. It was clearly this person who led his men to rob their carriage today, but now he was pretending to be a good person. If he wanted to swindle them, he should have at least put on a disguise. The shopkeeper and escort leader were so angry that they almost went mad. However, Pang Zhao's face was full of smiles. He called Hu Zi over and said, "You take some people and personally escort these people home. We should do good deeds to the end and help the Buddha to the west." The shopkeeper and escort leader, they were so angry that they could not speak. Pang Shao looked at the backs of these people and could not help but sigh with emotion. It turns out that doing good deeds is such a good thing. Brothers, we must continue to do good deeds in the future and save the people from disaster. Wang Yi is right. Yes, Wang Yi. Everyone chimed in. The group of people who were escorted by Hu Zi were so angry that they almost fainted. Pang Shao did not care what these people would report when they returned to the territory of the four-way pass. The next day, he took the same 1,000 men from yesterday and left the military camp to suppress the bandits, as usual. They waited by the roadside for several hours before they saw the flag of the four-way pass. Ever since the previous incident, the people of the four-way pass had learned to be shrewd. This time, they brought 3 times as many armed escorts as last time. Moreover, they were on guard the entire way. This was because they did not know where the enemy was hiding. However, these people's vigilance was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot in Pang Zhao's eyes. This time, they effortlessly transported the stolen goods from the bandits back to the military camp. They also rushed back and released the hostages who had been kidnapped by the bandits. This process was too smooth. Regardless of what the people of the four-way pass thought, Pang Shao gathered all the people at the square again. "Fellow villagers, let me tell you a piece of good news. In order to collect provisions, the army has been suppressing bandits recently. Now that we have taken back a lot of stolen goods from the bandits, I believe that with the army's actions this time, all the kings in the mountains near the old capital will have to think twice before taking action. This way, the safety of the people in the old capital will be guaranteed." Good. Good. The people cheered. This was because there were many bandits in this world. They had no respect for life and were even more unreasonable. As long as the people encountered them, losing their belongings and going bankrupt was a small matter. What they were most afraid of was threatening their lives. However, this time, Prince Zhongshuan actually led the army to suppress the bandits. Prince Zhongshuan is benevolent and righteous. That's right. Prince Zhongshuan is really a good person. Not only did he help us suppress the villains, but now he's going to suppress the bandits for us. Pang Shao stood on the stage with a very humble expression. "Doing things for the people is exactly what your majesty ordered us to do. It's not worthy of everyone's praise. I really don't dare to accept it. I really don't dare to accept it." The people's impression of the humble and polite Prince Zhongshuan became even better. In a private room on the second floor of a tea house by the roadside, Yu Qiyan and Gu Shixiang's faces were ashen. Chapter 709. Gu Shixiang was full of anger, but at this time, another voice floated in his heart and said to him, if the person he assisted had such wisdom, could judge the situation, and had the face to do such a thing, why would he, Gu Shixiang, have to work so hard and even lose his family? Looking at Yu Qiyan, whose face was red with anger, Gu Shixiang felt an indescribable depression in his heart. Yu Qiyan's actions had disappointed him many times. But he had already chosen a path and had sacrificed so much for it. There was no possibility of turning back. If he stopped now, wouldn't it be like what Qin Yining said, that he was only doing it for his own reputation? Gu Shixiang's mind was full of thoughts, but in the blink of an eye. He comforted Yu Qiyan and said, "Wang Yi, don't worry too much. To deal with the opponent, no one set the rule that we have to use fair and square methods. If Prince Zhongshuan doesn't do this, he probably won't be able to think of any other way. Fighting naturally depends on one's ability. If we can do it, we can also use all kinds of methods." Yu Qiyan heard this and shook his head in disdain. "I'm not as shameless as him." Gu Shixiang shook his head helplessly. Looking out the window again, Peng Xiao was blending into the crowd and talking to the people in a friendly and candid manner. He was talking about his determination to suppress the bandits. Originally, he didn't leave a good impression on the people in the old capital. But after these major events, Gu Shixiang was surprised to find that he had gained a firm foothold among the people. He and Yu Qiyan were originally from the old capital and had the identity of the royal family of the Yan dynasty. Now, they were not as popular as Peng Xiao among the people. How could this not make people feel frustrated? If Gu Shixiang felt this way, it was needless to say how Yu Qiyan felt at this time. In a private room in another restaurant not far from them, Mr. Liu, who had contacted Yu Qiyan and also went to ask Peng Xiao for the debt, didn't look any better. What suppression of bandits? What for the people? Peng Zhishi, this madman, was even more cruel than bandits. Did he think that the people in 4 Access were all blind and deaf? They had robbed them several times and saved their people several times. Those soldiers didn't even change their clothes once. Such an obvious demonstration of power, they were simply shameless. The most important thing was that their boss was already beginning to feel unhappy because of this. The things that they had lost these few times added up to the annual income of 4 Access's shops in the old capital. Although this amount of money was only a drop from 9 oxen, who would complain about having more money? What's more, this time, their plan failed and they were targeted by the rogue instead. No matter how many people, they were still was not as good as a tiger and was of a tiger was a tiger, of a tiger, a pack of a pack, a group of a pack of a wolf. This feeling was not only that, he felt vexed, lose. His position was closer to Peng Xiao than Yu Qiyan and Gu Shixiang, so he could hear Peng Xiao's boasting more clearly. Liu of the shopkeeper felt that this was the first time he had seen such a shameless person. He was so angry that his face turned green. After Peng Xiao finished chatting with the people, he jumped onto the high platform and said loudly, "Everyone, don't worry. Our army suppression of bandits will continue. We don't ask for anything else. We just want to clear out the bandits around us and give everyone peace." Good. Good. Wang Yi, good job. Good job, men of the army. The people cheered excitedly. Peng Xiao's bad image had been completely corrected. He didn't give the enemy any reason to be proud. Yu Qiyan slammed the table and stood up. He said angrily, "What a shameless person." Liu of the shopkeeper was also angry, but he was more frightened. Because Peng Xiao said that they were going to continue suppressing bandits, it meant that this shameless Wang Yi was going to continue robbing. Could it be that he was counting on robbing to pay the 100,000 soldiers? Then how many goods would they lose? Liu of the shopkeeper couldn't wait for Peng Xiao to finish speaking. He immediately left to find the head shopkeeper to think of a countermeasure. Qin Yining, who had seen enough of the commotion in the crowd, ordered the people around her, "Let's drive the carriage to the path Wang Yi must take when he returns." They hadn't seen each other for more than 10 days. Qin Yining thought that she could at least take a look and be satisfied. Bing Tang and Ji Yun looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Qin Yining stretched her neck to look at Pang Xiao in the crowd outside the carriage. She couldn't tell who was who in the crowd, but she couldn't help but look for Pang Xiao's figure. The procession left the square, and took a detour. They arrived at the road that they had to pass to reach the military camp. They stared for a short while. Then, they saw Pang Xiao and a small group of people galloping over. Pang Xiao seemed to have seen Qin Yining's carriage from afar. Before she got close, she ordered the people around her to slow down. When she got close, she shook the reins and jumped down without waiting for the horses to stop. Dark Cloud, with its shiny black fur, seemed to have a mind of its own. It slowed down on its own and slowly walked to the side. Sister E. Pang Xiao stood by the window. Qin Yining lifted the curtain. Her snow-white fur collar made her fair cheeks look as flawless as jade. When she saw him, her eyes were full of smiles as she teased, "I knew that you must have lived a very fulfilling life during this period of time. How is it? Do you have enough provisions for the army?" As she spoke, Bing Tang and Ji Yun got off the carriage. They curtsied and retreated to the side. Pang Xiao jumped into the carriage and sat next to Qin Yining. He hugged her and kissed her forehead. "You're right. However, there are many people in the army. It's not that easy to raise enough money. In any case, these things have solved the urgent problem. It also gave me a chance to stand firm in the old capital. I don't know if Yu Qiyan is so angry that he's about to cry." Qin Yining said with a smile, "You're too bad. They've already been sullen enough that their schemes failed time and time again, but you still didn't let them have an easy time. Now you've turned from an evil spirit who could stop children from crying at night into a righteous and good person. I'm sure he won't just cry from anger, he'll be annoyed to death." "What's there to be annoyed about?" "Naturally, he's annoyed that he set up such a good show for you." Qin Yining's long eyelashes fluttered. She was especially witty and quick-witted. Pang Xiao loved to see her frowning and far-sighted appearance when she was racking her brains. It made his heart itch a little. Pang Xiao held her in his arms and took a few deep breaths. Then, he said helplessly, "AI, no wonder people say that heroes can't resist the charms of a beautiful woman. I really don't have the willpower I had before. Now, I just want to solve the problem at hand as soon as possible and go home. That way, I can see you every day. When I miss you, I can hug and kiss you whenever I want. Now, I just need a wife and children to warm the bed. Everything is complete." This person changed the topic so quickly. Qin Yining was stunned by his words. She blushed and said, "We're talking about serious matters. Why did we change the topic?" Pang Xiao looked at her blushing face and couldn't help but tease her, "Am I not talking about serious matters?" Qin Yining rolled her eyes at him speechlessly. Pang Xiao, however, was in an extremely good mood and smiled. He hugged her and gently shook her. "All right, don't be angry. I just miss you. Don't worry. Everything is going well with my plan. It won't be long before the shopkeeper of Sitong's shop comes to me. It'll also let me see what kind of person he is. How about you? Are you okay at home? What about Brother Zhao and Brother Han?" Qin Yining knew Pang Zhao's ability, so she was naturally relieved. When she heard him ask about home, she smiled and said, "Everything is fine at home. The two children are being taken care of by the nanny. When I heard that you were going to make an announcement again, I quickly came out to take a look. The weather is still a little cold. I was afraid that the children would catch a cold, so I didn't dare to bring them with me. I know that everything will be fine with you at home." Pang Xiao kissed her cheek again and sighed, "I have to go. I can't keep my brothers waiting. Go. Take care of yourself." You must take care of yourself. Chapter 7:10. Now that head shopkeeper Xia wanted to see her, he didn't just come to visit her. What was the point of giving her an invitation? Head shopkeeper Xia did not take her seriously, and Qin Yining had wanted to teach him a lesson a long time ago. It was just that her maternal grandmother's incident happened a few days ago, and the new year had passed, so she did not have time to deal with him. Who would have thought that after such a long time, this head shopkeeper Xia still did not repent? Qin Yining took the invitation from Lu Dashun with both hands. She lowered her eyes and looked at it. A faint smile appeared on her face. Lu Dashun looked at Qin Yining's expression nervously and said, "Princess, what did head shopkeeper Xia say?" "What did he say?" "Take a look for yourself." Qin Yining casually handed the invitation to Lu Dashun. Lu Dashun received it in fear and trepidation. After looking at it carefully, he could not help but gasp. This head shopkeeper Xia really has a big tone. Princess is the owner, and you are also the noble princess. How could you be a guest at his home? He still has not come to greet you, princess. Qin Yining smiled and said, "That's right. Head shopkeeper Xia is really bold. I will have to trouble you to go back and tell him that this king's consort is busy and has no time." Lu Dashun nodded and stood up to salute. Yes, this lowly one will definitely pass on the message. Qin Yining nodded and picked up the tea. Lu Dashun knew that Qin Yining was definitely unhappy, so he naturally did not dare to stay any longer. He immediately saluted and left. After Lu Dashun left, Ji Yun said with righteous indignation, "This head shopkeeper Xia is really arrogant. He did not even greet Princess when she visited, yet he still has the nerve to do so. Does he really think that he has a lot of face?" Bing Tang also said, "This person is so arrogant. He definitely has someone backing him." "That's right." Qin Yining was deep in thought and called Jing Zhu over. "I'll have to trouble you to help me investigate the situation in the manor and see how the refugees I took in are doing now. In addition, focus on finding out who this head shopkeeper Xia has been in close contact with recently, and who gave him the confidence to repeatedly ignore me, his boss." "Yes, I'll do it right away." Jing Zhu immediately took the order and left to investigate the matter in secret. Qin Yining originally thought that shopkeeper Xia would come to his senses after being rejected by her once. But who would have thought that in less than half a day, head shopkeeper Xia would send another invitation. This time, it was not Lu Dashun who came to run the errand. Clearly, Lu Dashun did not want to get involved in this mess. He was afraid that Qin Yining would mistake him for shopkeeper Xia. Qin Yining read the post and saw that the content was exactly the same as the previous post. Not a single word had been changed. He knew how sincere the post was. After Qin Yining had Han Gu and Zhao Gu his personality had become much gentler and more magnanimous than before. However, he was still angered by head shopkeeper Xiao's various actions. Qin Yining rejected the post as usual and instructed Ji Yun, "Tell the manservant that if he wants to see this king's consort, head shopkeeper Xia might not even agree to meet this king's consort. Moreover, he doesn't know how to distinguish between status and importance. This king's consort is very busy and has no time to eat his meal." Ji Yun was also filled with righteous indignation. Hearing this, she immediately acknowledged and strode out to pass on the message. Qin Yining sat at a small table. Not long after, he saw Ji Yun enter the room. She walked around the carved screen and arrived in front of Qin Yining. "Princess, I've already passed on the message. However, this servant saw that manservant was very arrogant and didn't care about us at all. Perhaps he took after his master." Qin Yining chuckled. His master hugged someone's thigh, so he felt that he could also run amok. Very good. Their actions have allowed me to find something to do. It also saves me from boredom. Ji Yun's mood relaxed a lot. She smiled and said, this servant knew that Princess would have a way to deal with them. She admired Qin Yining the most for being able to deal with anything indifferently. He had never panicked when encountering a difficult problem. Every time, he could face it head-on. In the evening, Qin Yining had just fed the two toddlers when Qiu Lu lifted the curtain and entered. Princess, third shopkeeper Lu requests an audience. I know. Ask him to go to the front hall. I'll be right there. Qin Yining was a bit surprised. It was already this time, yet third shopkeeper Lu suddenly requested an audience. Perhaps there was something important. This time, Lu Dashuan's attitude towards Qin Yining was much more respectful than last time. His tone was even more careful. Princess, this lowly one came today to invite Princess to a place. Qin Yining raised an eyebrow. How did this person learn to invite her out? Seeing that Qin Yining was silent, Lu Dashun hurriedly said, Princess, don't misunderstand. This lowly one doesn't have any other intentions. Today, this lowly one wants to invite Princess to Guilin Lu. There is something important that Princess needs to know. When Princess gets there, you will naturally understand this lowly one's intentions. Qin Yining vaguely understood something. He turned around and ordered people to prepare a carriage. Ji Yun and Bing Tang immediately split up and prepared carriages and guards to follow and protect her. Qin Yining stood up. Qiu Lu and Xian Yun had already brought over the cloak she needed to wear when going out, as well as a small brass hand warmer to warm her hands. Qin Yining stood in place and ordered in a low voice, take good care of these two brothers. Don't let them bump into anything. Understood. Princess, don't worry. This servant will watch carefully. The wet nurses won't dare to be negligent in the slightest. When Wang Yi went out, he had called the wet nurses in front of him and carefully instructed them. Who would dare to make Wang Yi unhappy? Qin Yining thought of Pang Zhao's serious appearance when he went out and found it funny. After dressing properly, Qin Yining put on some Jinghu Wei and went out. Who knew that when the carriage went out of the side door and turned onto the main street, they would see Master Zhong getting out of the carriage and walking over. Qin Yining lifted the curtain of the carriage and greeted him with a smile. Then she said, I was just about to go out. Master Zhong, come with me. We can talk slowly. Master Zhong immediately acknowledged and asked with a smile, where is Princess Consort going? Guilin Tower. Qin Yining laughed softly. Guilin Tower was her property. She didn't know what kind of trouble those people wanted to cause in her property. The group quickly arrived at Guilin Tower. Third shopkeeper Lu and Master Zhong led the way, one on the left and one on the right. Third shopkeeper Lu said a few words to a waiter in a low voice and then led Qin Yining upstairs to the Xian room. The private rooms here couldn't be called grand. They were just mid-level. The walls were stenciled. If one listened carefully, they could faintly hear the sound of conversation next door. Third shopkeeper Lu lowered his voice and said to Qin Yining, today, head shopkeeper Xia has invited someone to eat wine next door. The three of them sat down with the guards. Qin Yining happened to hear several people talking loudly next door. Those people seemed to have eaten a lot of wine and were already a bit drunk. One of them said loudly, come, let's toast to head shopkeeper Xia. Right now, head shopkeeper Xia has power and business is booming. Brothers, let's drink together. Chapter 7:11. Qin Yining had never met head shopkeeper Xia, but Master Zhong had met him before, and they were even very familiar with each other. If it weren't for the fact that he was familiar with head shopkeeper Xia and thought that he understood head shopkeeper Xia's character, he wouldn't have handed over Qin Yining's large and small fields and several businesses to him when he left the old capital. Unfortunately, even someone surnamed Zhong, who had been observing people for half his life, would sometimes make a mistake. How could he have known that head shopkeeper Xia was actually this kind of person? The voices next door were still loud and clear. Shopkeeper Xia spoke slowly, but the words that came out of his mouth were extremely arrogant. It's not that I, old Xia, don't know how to be humble, but compared to a woman, I don't lose to her in business. Thinking back to when the Yan dynasty was still around, I also traveled extensively with my father's generation. When the younger generation in the south asked around and mentioned head shopkeeper Xia, outsiders didn't know, but those in the same industry all knew. Back then, I only agreed to manage a woman's business for old Zhong's sake. It's also because the world is difficult. Wasn't there a war at that time? That's right, that's right. Head shopkeeper Xiao's reputation has long been known. I've also heard of him and admired him for a long time. Someone echoed. Someone else followed head shopkeeper Xiao's words and said, if it were up to me, that woman should know her place. Originally, she was still able to flaunt her power because her man is the famous Wang Yi, so we should be more careful when we see her. But now, her man can't even protect himself. Ha! That's right. I heard that the amount of money owed isn't a small amount. He said that he would let the prefectural magistrate pay the debt, but if the prefectural magistrate can't take out the money in the end, won't he still have to hand it over to him? I think so too. Don't be fooled by his bragging. Only those ignorant commoners would believe him. That woman should take a look at her man. He's already in a terrible fix. When it comes to military matters, it's possible that a mutiny will occur if things go wrong. When the time comes, the soldiers with hatred will rush in. No matter how skilled her man is in martial arts, he won't be able to protect her. She's about to lose her life, yet she's still clinging on to power. Everyone's mocking words were heard by the people next door. Lu Dashun lowered his head and peeked at Qin Yining's expression from the corner of his eye. From time to time, he would sneak a peek at Master Zhong's expression. Master Zhong was already sweating profusely. His nose was sunken, and his temples were covered in sweat. Ji Yun and the others behind Qin Yining gnashed their teeth in anger. If it wasn't for Qin Yining's orders, they would have rushed over to deal with that group of shameless old men. A group of men, but their mouths were even more talkative than women. They spoke incoherently, and even dared to talk about things without any evidence. They were simply shameless. Qin Yining was probably the calmest person in the room. She was even in the mood to smile faintly. She raised her hand to suppress the furious emotions of the few people and made a shushing gesture. It was obvious that she was interested in continuing to listen. Seeing that Qin Yining didn't get up and leave in anger, nor did she go next door, and actually wanted to continue listening to those filthy words, Lu Dashun's expression was rather shocked. This princess consort was even more composed and rational than he had expected. He couldn't help but mock the head shopkeeper Xia next door. So what if he was old and experienced? He was still someone who didn't even know how to look at people. After doing business for so many years, he didn't develop a humble personality. Instead, he became even more arrogant. He really was useless. Head shopkeeper Xia was drunk at this time, and he became even more proud after drinking wine. Especially after being praised to the skies by so many people, he only felt that he was the best in the world and no one could surpass him. He didn't have the slightest bit of apprehension when he spoke. Actually, you and I aren't unkind people. I, old Xia, have never mistreated that person. In my opinion, a little girl like her should just sit there and wait to enjoy the dividends. If she treated me with courtesy, I naturally wouldn't let her fall short. But she's someone who won't walk and will fight back instead. She actually rejected me a few times these days. My posts were all rejected. It's clear that she's still putting on airs. She really doesn't know how to appreciate favors. That's right. With a woman's experience, I'm afraid that she can only see the small profits in front of her. Hasn't she thought about it? Isn't the profit or loss of her estate all dependent on your word? Humph. This is me being kind. I won't do anything to her. If she continues to persist in going about things the wrong way, I'll make her lose everything. She doesn't want to see me now, but in the future, I'll make her come crying and begging me. Of course. We already know that head shopkeeper Xia is amazing. If she doesn't know how to appreciate favors, we brothers will have to wait and see you show off your skills. The banquet next door was still going on, but the topic had already moved on to other places. The men began to discuss which brothel had brought in some strange woman. It was clear that they would go and have some fun after eating and drinking to their fill. Qin Yining waved at them and got up to walk to the door. Ji Yun and the bodyguards followed closely behind. Lu Dashun and Master Zhong walked at the back in silence. When they met the waiter who was leading the way, Master Zhong and Lu Dashun whispered a few words to him. Seeing the waiter nod his head in fear and trepidation, the two of them followed Qin Yining's footsteps. When they returned to Qin Manor, Qin Yining invited Lu Dashun and Master Zhong to the front hall. As soon as Qin Yining sat down, Master Zhong knelt in front of Qin Yining with a thump. Princess, it's my negligence that I assigned the business of the old capital to someone with such a bad character. If it weren't for this, the businesses and power of the old capital wouldn't still be under your control. This old man is incompetent and really isn't suitable to stay by your side. It's better for me to return to my hometown and recuperate. Qin Yining stood up and personally helped Master Zhong up. He smiled and said, "How can I blame you? You were also deceived. You are also a victim. You and I have known each other for so long. I know Master Zhong's loyalty and ability. Don't say such discouraging words, and don't think about being tolerant. If I don't have your help by my side, who will I rely on when I encounter trouble in the future?" He pretended to be angry and said sternly, "You are not allowed to say such things in the future. Do you understand?" Master Zhong was so moved that he almost cried. This old man is ashamed. Lu Dashun watched from the side. He felt a little disappointed, but he felt even more emotional and envious. It seemed that this princess was really a kind person. After Qin Yining sat down again, his gaze fell on Lu Dashun. Lu Dashun immediately lowered his head and looked like he was waiting for orders. But after waiting for a while with his head lowered, Qin Yining still didn't speak. Silence was sometimes the most powerful weapon. Lu Dashun really wanted to know what Qin Yining was thinking. Did he already know what he was thinking? But he didn't dare to ask. Soon, sweat appeared on his forehead. Chapter 7:12. The expression on Lu Dashun's face changed from respect and anticipation to shock. He never thought that Qin Yining would suddenly turn to him. "Princess, how did I?" The question he did not ask was swallowed back into his mouth when he met Qin Yining's knowing gaze. The scene fell into a deathly silence. There were no stupid people present. Even if they did not understand at the time of the incident, now that they sat down and thought about it carefully, they understood. Master Zhong lowered his head and did not speak. His dark hair was facing Qin Yining as he did his best to hide what he was thinking. Qin Yining looked at the young man who had not even reached 20 years of age and helplessly sighed. It seemed that a person's personality would change according to their environment. The first time she saw Lu Dashun, this person had a timid appearance. With a glance, she knew that head shopkeeper Xia had found him as a scapegoat. He was wearing new clothes made of good material, but he was so nervous that he did not know where to put his hands and feet. But in just a few days, he had already learned how to scheme. He had learned how to cause trouble for Master Zhong and head shopkeeper Xia. She had been unhappy with head shopkeeper Xia for a long time, but Master Zhong was loyal to her. She had always trusted him. It was clear that Lu Dashun's ambition was not small. Qin Yining could not help but feel a little emotional. Sure enough, where there were people, there would be politics. In the past, when she did not have many people at her side, the servants all knew to keep their distance. Now that she had more people, as long as their relationships involved benefits, who was above who was above who was above who, it became harder and harder to distinguish. Seeing that Qin Yining did not speak, Lu Dashun began to panic. He anxiously said, "Princess, please calm your anger. This lowly one is not unhappy with you, nor is it that I want to hide anything. It is because head shopkeeper Xia was promoted by Master Zhong, and Master Zhong is your trusted aide. If this lowly one spoke rashly, I fear that I would not be able to gain your trust. Hearsay is false, but seeing is believing. Since this lowly one was fated to become princess subordinate, I naturally do not want you to be kept in the dark. I hope that princess will understand." Qin Yining smiled. In truth, half of what Lu Dashun said came from his heart. Indeed, it was because Master Zhong and Qin Yining were too close. Furthermore, shopkeeper Xia was personally promoted by Master Zhong, so he had no choice but to do this. However, Qin Yining also understood that there was a hidden motive behind this. However, everyone had their own selfish motives, so she wouldn't expose him. There's no need to be nervous. I know what you're thinking. You're acting like this because you don't know much about us. In the future, just speak your mind. You're a sincere person. As long as you do your job well, you'll be put in an important position, Qin Yining said sincerely with a smile. When Lu Dashun heard this, he immediately bowed and said excitedly, "Thank you, Princess." "Thank you, Your Highness." "Get up, there's no need for such formalities." Qin Yining smiled and looked at Master Zhong. He raised his eyebrows mischievously and said jokingly, "Master Zhong won't take revenge on him, right?" Once this was said, Lu Dashun's heart began to thump. Princess' words seemed to be asking Master Zhong, but in truth, she was giving him advice. They both understood what he was thinking. They just didn't want to expose him. Lu Dashun had originally thought that he was a smart and powerful person with unlimited potential. But now, it seemed that he had been too conceited. Instead, he had become a laughingstock. This time, Lu Dashun was completely convinced. He lowered his head and repeatedly said, "I don't dare." Master Zhong understood that although Qin Yining appeared to be asking him, he was actually supporting him. In his heart, he felt even more guilty and fearful. "Princess, it was my incompetence that caused me to make this sort of mistake. I am truly unworthy of princess forgiveness. I already know that I have sinned. Third shopkeeper Lu was just speaking frankly in front of you. He did not do anything wrong. Even if third shopkeeper Lu really did do something wrong, princess will punish him. How could this old man dare to take revenge on his own?" Qin Yining smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Let's all sit down and talk. We are all on the same side. We all have the same goal." Master Zhong bowed and sat down. Lu Dashun's heart was shocked again. Master Zhong's words just now were telling him that even if Master Zhong really did something wrong, the princess would punish him. He, who was also a shopkeeper, did not have the right or position to make small moves on his own. Lu Dashun's forehead was covered in sweat. It seemed that he had been too proud and had forgotten his place. He had also forgotten that the people in front of him were all powerful people. He had been so proud that he had almost brought disaster upon himself. Qin Yining ordered the servant girls to bring more tea and refreshments. He then chatted with the two for a while. He did not seem to be angered by shopkeeper Xia at all. This clear contrast made shopkeeper Xia seem even more arrogant, and Qin Yining seemed even more unfathomable. There are two more matters that I need to trouble the two of you to do. Princess, please give your orders. The two responded and stood up to cup their hands in greeting. Qin Yining said, the old capital has not been peaceful these past few years. Back then, there was famine and war. After the earthquake happened, the people had no way to make a living. Although my village has taken care of many refugees, it is like trying to put out a burning cart with a cup of water. I cannot save everyone. However, I am not willing to give up on the things that I can do. Therefore, I plan to exempt all the tenants under my jurisdiction from paying a year's rent. Master Zhong, I will have to trouble you with this matter. Third shopkeeper Lu will be assisting from the side. When Master Zhong heard this, he immediately nodded in understanding. But third shopkeeper Lu was a little shocked. Other people did not know, but when he had been by shopkeeper Xia's side a while ago, he had figured out just how many properties Qin Yining had. Although those properties were not under her name, the amount of food produced by those lands would be enough to feed an army if there was a good harvest. If he didn't take any of those rents, how much money would that be? Princess, Qin Yining smiled and waved her hand. Money is just a worldly possession. Moreover, back then, I was once the holy maiden of the Tianjizi dynasty. Wendian also did that. Now, I am just collecting some rent. This is my duty. When she said this, Lu Dashun remembered that although he had not been in the old capital, he had heard of the holy maiden Wendian dynasty's grandeur. This was because the Dian dynasty had fallen. Otherwise, Master Xuanzu's name might have been as resounding in the Dian dynasty as the Tianjizi dynasty. Lu Dashun nodded repeatedly. Master Zhong, however, understood that Qin Yining did not simply want to do good deeds. Back then, she had taken in many refugees and used her own money to buy the land of many of the people who wanted to escape. This was for the sake of giving everyone money to escape. However, she did not expect that good deeds would be rewarded. When Pang Zhao's troops entered the old capital, they did not massacre the people in the city, nor did they trample on the land. The troops and horses were all well behaved. When the people who had escaped returned, they did not have a place to go, nor did they have a way to survive. Qin Yining had taken in all of those people. Most of the people in her village were these people. Back then, they were all very grateful for the grace of the great landowner. It was just that a large portion of them did not know that the owner behind the scenes of the village was Qin Yining. Now that she was doing all of this, it was nothing more than to let the refugees who had received grace remember the benefits of the past. At the very least, they should not cause any trouble when shopkeeper Xia did something bad. Master Zhong had followed Qin Yining for a long time, so his guess was not wrong. Qin Yining was still very confident in her popularity. Even if she did not mention the matter of her taking in the refugees, the people of the old capital and Yang County should still remember the good things that she and Pang Shao had done for them. However, they did not deliberately publicize this, so many people who came later did not know about it. She believed that if she put her heart into it, she would be able to build good relationships with the people. As long as she had the hearts of the people, other things would be easier to handle. While Qin Yining was at home planning the matter of shopkeeper Xia, Pang Zhao's camp was in chaos. In the past few days, the matter of suppressing bandits continued. Pang Zhao took out many of his brothers in turn, but he left behind the people who had been on his blacklist in the beginning. This made these people feel very unsatisfied. In the end, the so-called bandits no longer dared to walk on the road. This was because no matter whether they walked on the official road or the small road, whether they brought the shopkeeper with them under the banner of the four-way shop, or whether they disguised themselves as other merchants, all of the goods they transported out of the city were robbed. Moreover, when they were suppressing bandits, they only allowed people to enter and not leave. This caused the four-way shop's external trade to be interrupted. The people of the four-way shop were in a terrible fix. The people in the camp who had not received any pay up until now were also very sullen. It would be fine if no one received any pay, but how would they feel when they saw the other brothers in the same camp get paid every day? But they did not. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner according to Pang Zhao's plan. On this day, more than 1,000 people, who had been bribed in the beginning, finally gathered on the drill ground. Wang Yi is unfair. Why did Wang Yi only bring them and not us? Why haven't you distributed the spoils of war to us yet? These people were even angrier than the first time they had caused trouble. When it came to their own interests, no one was willing to back down. Pang Xiao was dressed in a short black robe, his hair neatly tied up high. He stood on the drill ground with his hands behind his back, looking expressionlessly at the noisy crowd in front of him. Although he had a thorough understanding of human nature, he still felt somewhat sullen when he saw that these soldiers were working harder for their own interests than when they were fighting the enemy. Moreover, they were not loyal and devoted. They had long been secretly bribed to stay in the military camp to monitor his situation at any time and place, with the intention of conspiring against him. The crowd's noise gradually became louder because of Pang Zhao's silence. When the noise reached an intolerable level, Pang Xiao said in a low voice, "Everyone, shut up." Huzi, who had been standing behind Pang Xiao for a long time, immediately stood up and roared, "Shut up, listen to Wang Ye's orders." There were also those men who had followed Pang Xiao to suppress bandits many times and were sincerely convinced by Pang Xiao, who said in unison, "Listen to Marshal's orders, listen to Marshal's orders." Chapter 7:13. When these people quieted down, Pang Xiao stepped forward with his hands behind his back and reprimanded in a deep voice, "What, are you trying to rebel? So many of you have gathered to cause trouble, and this is not the first time. This king had a reason to kill all of you on the spot just now, do you know that?" When Pang Xiao said this, these people suddenly came back to their senses and couldn't help but feel some lingering fear. Now was not the time to consider whether Pang Xiao could gain a firm foothold in the army. Now, most of the people in the army were under Pang Xiao's command. If he had really killed all of them just to get rid of his dissidents, it would only be reported to the court with a sentence of exterminating the rebels. At that time, Your Majesty would not only not blame him, but might even reward him. At this time, no one dared to continue shouting at Pang Xiao. But there were still some leaders who were unwilling to give up and said, "Wang Yi has been suppressing the bandits for so long, yet he refuses to take us brothers with him. Is it because he dislikes us? Wang Yi is too unfair in his handling of things." Pang Xiao chuckled, "Don't any of you know why this king didn't take you guys with him at the beginning?" When everyone heard this, they gradually fell into an awkward silence. How could they not know the reason? Wang Yi was holding a grudge against them for causing trouble at the beginning and almost causing a mutiny. That was why he didn't take them with him to make a fortune. Some people still wanted to straighten their necks and make a ruckus at Pang Xiao, but there were also smart people who put on flattering smiles and discussed with Pang Xiao in a low voice, "Wang Yi, please calm down. We are all uncouth people who haven't studied much since we were young. We don't even know how to read big words. Please don't lower yourself to our level." Some people understood this person's intention and started to soften up. "That's right, Wang Yi. We didn't know any better and made Wang Yi angry. It's our fault. In the end, we're all brothers in the army. If we want to get rich, we'll get rich together. In the past, we were the ones who were worthless. Wang Yi, just treat us like a fart and let us go." Just a moment ago, there was a wave of curses, but now it had turned into a clamor of flattery. Pang Xiao looked helpless. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "We're all brothers who have gone through fire and water together. There's really no need to make things so tense. Yes, yes. Wang Yi is right. From now on, we brothers will never do such inhumane things again. That's right, we'll listen to whatever Wang Yi says in the future. If Wang Yi asks us to chase a dog, we'll definitely not chase a chicken. Wang Yi, why don't you bring us along to exterminate the bandits? We want to do something for the people too. Pang Xiao immediately shifted his gaze to the person who spoke just now, causing that person to shudder and choke back the flattery he was about to say. He became more and more uneasy. Unexpectedly, Pang Xiao couldn't hold it in anymore and laughed out loud. Huzi, who was originally filled with righteous indignation behind Pang Xiao, also laughed when he saw this. Even the Jinghu Wei who were loyal to Pang Xiao and the soldiers who followed Pang Xiao's orders behind him had the same expression. The atmosphere immediately became relaxed. Pang Xiao pointed at the crowd and said helplessly, "You bunch of bastards. You either cause trouble for me or make yourself look like this. Who did you learn from?" This sentence caused everyone's hearts to thump wildly. They hurriedly expressed anxiously, "We didn't learn from anyone. No one taught us." They looked like they were trying to hide something. Pang Xiao didn't seem to notice anything wrong at all. He smiled helplessly and said, "Forget it. I didn't really want to not bring you guys along. Since we're going to exterminate the bandits, let's go together. We'll get rich together." Good. Good. Long live Wang Yi. Long live Wang Yi. The crowd cheered in unison as if they had received the most precious treasure in the world. They had long been envious of the pay that others had received. Pang Xiao then ordered the 1,000 men to set off information. With the thought of getting rich in their hearts, these people had an unprecedented momentum. Each of them was like a hungry tiger that had just come down the mountain. Their eyes were shining. Pang Xiao rode his horse and led the team. They left the army camp and went straight to a nearby territory called Mount Songlong. The 1,000 men also followed behind in an orderly manner. Everyone was eager to give it a try. If there was an old senior in this group who had followed Pang Xiao to suppress bandits on the main and small roads, he would realize that the route that Wang Yi took to suppress the bandits this time was completely different from before. This time, it seemed like they were really going to the bandits' nest. Mount Songlong had 3 continuous mountain ranges. Because of its slender and long path, the vegetation was dense. From afar, it looked like a long flying dragon, hence its name. It happened to be a chaotic time when bandits were gradually increasing. During this period of time, the brothers in the stronghold were all on tenterhooks. Because a rash Marshal Qing came to the imperial court and actually wanted to suppress bandits for no reason. Did they not offer enough filial piety? Or was there something wrong with this marshal's head? When the news of suppressing the bandits spread, the brothers all became nervous. The leaders of the various strongholds all gathered at Mount Songlong's stronghold to discuss how to deal with the enemy. When they heard that the rash youth who wanted to suppress the bandits was actually the invincible god of war Pang Xiao, everyone was so scared that they almost peed their pants on the spot. How could they be a match for that person? Even if they were given time to train for 8 to 10 years, they probably wouldn't be able to defeat that person with a flick of his finger. The leaders were all badly battered. They braced themselves to come up with a countermeasure. Taking advantage of the fact that the evil spirit fetus hadn't attacked yet, they hurriedly set up tight deployments. They dug traps and stored up food. They were extremely busy. Who would have thought that when they were all in formation and waiting to fight the enemy, a scout actually found out new news? That evil spirit Wang Yi, in the name of suppressing the bandits, actually led his troops to squat by the roadside and rob people all day long. He even specifically robbed the Sidong number. He had no intention of attacking their stronghold at all. This made everyone heave a sigh of relief. Then there were all kinds of discussions. Some felt that Pang Shao was wicked, but most of the bandits felt that Pang Shao, this evil spirit fetus, had both martial arts and brains. He really was a bandit material. It was a pity that they didn't have the fate to persuade him to join them. Otherwise, wouldn't their business grow bigger and bigger? However, no one was in a hurry to withdraw their defenses. They were more or less still afraid that Pang Shao would really attack. But they waited and waited until their patience was exhausted. That person was still focused on robbing and didn't even have the interest to look at them. The leaders all cursed Pang Shao in their hearts. That sanctimonious guy really had good luck. They were all bandits, but he thought that Wang Yi was robbing people. Their brothers were even more dedicated to their jobs. Why didn't anyone have such good luck? Some of the brothers had already said that everyone should disperse and return to their own homes to guard their own strongholds. However, there were also some leaders who were quick-witted and cautious. They were afraid that there was a trap, so they didn't dare to disband the team immediately. Therefore, this group of bandits from various strongholds still gathered at Mount Azure Dragon. However, although they were still in one place, they didn't seriously defend. In any case, Wang Yi was in the same line as them and was busy dealing with the Sitong number. How could he have the leisure to come to their stronghold? But they never expected that they would be happy too early. That evil spirit fetus would actually bring troops to attack their stronghold. Pang Shao waved his long saber and pointed at Mount Azure Dragon in front of him. He shouted loudly, "Brothers! It's this stronghold. There are countless treasures in it, and it's filled with a bunch of good-for-nothings. With our recent training, it's just a matter of swinging our fists to take them down. Everyone, don't hesitate. Let's charge." After seeing with their own eyes that the others brought carts and carts of treasures back to the camp, and even received their pay, how could these 1,000 people still have any doubts about this place? They didn't hesitate to grab their weapons and charge forward. In the stronghold's meeting hall, the men were still sleeping soundly. Last night, they drank until they were dead drunk. How could they expect that someone would attack the mountain today? Even the sentries at the mountain gate were startled awake from their sleep when the people charged up the mountain. The sound of the branches being stepped on was too loud. They threw away their wine jugs and loudly reported inside. At the same time, they hurriedly searched for weapons to fight the enemy. Pang Shao and his men had cleaned up the entire Mount Azure Dragon in less than 4 hours. They had annihilated more than 1,000 bandits, captured more than 1,000 captives, and rescued more than 700 ordinary people who had been captured by the bandits to work as laborers. However, because these bandits had prepared beforehand, they had set up many traps and mechanisms on the mountain, causing more than 100 casualties among the attacking troops. But if this was a war, although the entire process of attacking the mountain couldn't be said to be particularly smooth, it was still a victory for the few to win against the many. The only sad thing was that among the 700 ordinary people who were rescued, 400 to 500 of them were women. The oldest of these women was in the prime of their youth and had experienced inhumane torture at the hands of the bandits. After being rescued, there was no joy on their faces, only despair. There were even more than 10 women who, after kneeling and thanking the soldiers who saved them, turned around and killed themselves by hitting trees and rocks. With the first to commit suicide, a group of people followed suit. However, those who were a step slower were all stopped by the soldiers in a flurry. Pang Zhao's eyes were red with anger. He shouted, "What are you doing? Our brothers saved you, could it be that we want you to die?" The women's cries were mournful. Anyone who heard them could feel their sadness and despair. "General, there's something you don't know. We women have nowhere else to go. For the women who were robbed, even if they have a home to return to, their families will not tolerate us for the sake of their reputation. At that time, I'm afraid we will also die. Instead of seeing the faces of those family members who can't tolerate us, we might as well end it here. With that said, there were immediately people who cried and killed themselves again. Some hit rocks, some took off their belts to hang themselves. It was really a mess and very miserable. Stop them, quick! Pang Shao immediately ordered. He was so depressed that he almost couldn't breathe. Back then, his sister Yi was also robbed. She survived in the desert for a few days with difficulty and was even almost taken away by Duke Xie to become a concubine. At that time, did Sister Yi also think of ending her life? Did she also think that her family would not tolerate her after she returned home? Chapter 7:14. Whenever he thought that Qin Yining might have suffered the same pain as these women, Pang Xiao's anger boiled. Turning around and glaring at the more than 1,000 captives behind him, Pang Xiao exhaled deeply and only said one word, kill. Huzi immediately understood and ordered the soldiers to move towards the captives. When the bandits saw the murderous intent of the soldiers, they were all scared witless and kowtowed repeatedly to beg for mercy. Spare us, ancestors, spare us, we have already surrendered. Yes, we will turn over a new leaf and never be bandits again. The world is not good and we had no choice but to become bandits on the mountain. We really didn't mean it. Please spare us, your majesty. Pang Shao looked back and said coldly, if this king lets you go, what will happen to the common people who have been harmed by you? Do you have a reason to be bandits and harm others just because you are pitiful? You are men, but you rely on your strength to bully the weak and oppress good women. Don't you have mothers and sisters at home? Don't you have wives and daughters? You trample on other people's women. Have you ever thought about whether you are worthy of your conscience? This king hates people like you the most. If you have the ability, go fight against the foreign enemies. Go to the north and fight the Tatars. You have so much strength, but you use it all to bully women. You all deserve to die. At this point, Pang Shao said sternly, kill. These bandits are wicked beyond redemption. Leave none alive. Yes. This was the first time that the remaining 900+ soldiers were so willing to obey Pang Xiao's orders. Although they had been bribed to cause trouble for Pang Xiao, they had truly witnessed Pang Xiao's ability in this battle. They had never seen such a clean and efficient command before. What's more, the way Pang Xiao dealt with the bandits and saved the people had won their admiration. Regardless of whether they were on the opposite side in the past, just looking at Pang Xiao's character now, it was worthy of admiration. They were soldiers and looked down on those who relied on their strength to commit crimes. Even after they were caught, they still acted pitiful and had no choice. Just like what Wang Yi had said, if they had the ability, they should go to the battlefield and kill the enemy. What kind of ability was bullying women, the elderly, and children? For a moment, Mount Azure Dragon was filled with the smell of blood. The bandits' cries and pleas for mercy were mixed together. The women who wanted to commit suicide were all dumbstruck when they saw this hellish scene. They had never seen so many people being killed in one breath in their entire lives. Moreover, it was done in the blink of an eye. The thick smell of blood filled the air, making them want to vomit. The two children had just fallen asleep when the warm curtain in front of the door was lifted. Ji Yun silently walked in. She curtsied and pointed outside. Qin Yining knew something had happened. She held the infant and hummed a small tune in a low voice. She placed the child in the cradle and softly instructed the wet nurse to take good care of him before tiptoeing out of the warm room. When she reached the corridor, Qin Yining gathered her shoulders and asked in a low voice, "What is it?" "Princess consort, Huzi has returned. He said that Wang Yi has something to say to you." Qin Yining nodded and immediately went to see Huzi. Huzi's soft armor was black, so no dried blood could be seen. However, his hair was messy and there was a faint smell of blood on his body. It was obvious that he had been through a fierce battle. Qin Yining worriedly stepped forward and asked anxiously, "What happened?" Huzi quickly bowed and explained with a smile, "Princess consort, don't worry. This is the blood of those bandits. Wang Yi is not injured, and neither am I. Today, Wang Yi took us to suppress the bandits." Suppress the bandits. When Qin Yining heard about suppressing the bandits, she subconsciously thought that it was the plan they had discussed before. But on second thought, there weren't that many bodyguards on the four-way pass. It was unlikely that Huzi, who was always by Pang Zhao's side, had to go into battle to kill the enemy and get himself covered in blood. Therefore, they must have really gone to suppress the bandits. Qin Yining carefully asked about what had happened today. Huzi explained how General Huzi's camp had been in chaos and how Pang Zhao had arranged everything. Finally, she talked about the women who had nowhere else to go and wanted to commit suicide. Wang Yi managed to persuade them with great difficulty, but there were still many women who couldn't accept it and committed suicide before he could. It was very pitiful. The camp was filled with men, so there was no way to bring these women back. Therefore, Wang Yi came to beg Princess Consort to see if there was any way to settle them down. "Do you have any work on the farmstead? Let them do it first and at least give them a way out." When Qin Yining heard Huzi's words, she could relate it to the tragic scene at the time. Her heart was moved. Even if she didn't have a place to settle these people down, she would think of a way. Qin Yining said, "Don't worry. There is a lot of work to be done on the farmstead. Also, I just discussed with Master Zhong about setting up a silk factory and a weaving factory. We need women to do the work for mulberry trees, silkworms, and textiles. Even if this didn't happen, I would still find other people to do it. If these women are willing, they can all come to my place." When Huzi heard this, her face lit up with joy. "Princess Consort, you are such a good person." She bowed to Qin Yining and said, "I will go back and tell Wang Yi." Chapter 7:15. The study room was brightly lit. Magistrate Yang sat sideways on the chair with an official hat, looking at Qiu Feishan, who was sitting on the main seat with some caution. Qiu Feishan was wearing a light blue brocade man's suit. Her hair was tied high on the top of her head with a jade hairpin, revealing her handsome face. She was looking down at the note in her hand. Her fair index finger tapped on the table. After a while, she finally revealed a faint smile. When she smiled, her eyes became softer. However, Magistrate Yang was even more frightened when he saw this. Could it be that this person was so angry that he became muddle-headed and laughed out loud? "Miss, don't be angry. I think that Pang Zhishi is just an ignorant brute who is addicted to robbing. Not only did he rob your goods, but he also robbed the bandits' village." Qiu Feishan raised her hand, and Magistrate Yang's words were stuck in his throat. "He is a brute." It seems that Magistrate Yang doesn't know him well enough. Magistrate Yang was more and more confused. Many of the goods sent out of the city by the four-way ship had been robbed by the army, causing the local business of the four-way ship to be suspended. However, Qiu Feishan, the head shopkeeper, was still able to remain calm. She didn't seem to be angry at Pang Zhao's shameless behavior. Instead, she praised him. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. It seemed that the shopkeeper of the Four Ports, who had been in business for many years, had a side that women couldn't guess. Qiu Feishan saw Magistrate Yang's puzzled expression and couldn't help shaking her head. "If he is the same as King Zhenan, then my trip to the south will be meaningless." Qiu Feishan stood up and ordered the pretty maid beside her with a smile, "Send an invitation to the commander in the army camp. Tell him that the shopkeeper of the Four Ports wants to see him." "Miss," Magistrate Yang suddenly stood up and said anxiously, "Are you going to tell Pang Zhishi your identity? Do you think he can't guess it?" Qiu Feishan's smile deepened. If he can't guess it, he won't push the debt of 3 million taels of silver to you. Magistrate Yang was speechless. After a while, he said, is he so smart? Has he guessed our plan? Of course. Chiu Feishan said, looking at how he clearly rewards and punishes people in the barracks, and looking at how he rescued innocent women and people today, I know that he is a very principled person. If he wasn't certain that Lu Zhang was the owner of the 4-access shop and deliberately made an IOU of 3 million taels of silver to make things difficult for him, if he didn't guess that I, who was temporarily living in your residence, was the head shopkeeper of the 4-access shop, he wouldn't have done this series of actions. What Pang Xiao did was not irresponsibly reneging on a debt, but simply shifting the blame to the person who really deserved it. It was precisely because he had guessed the relationship between Magistrate Yang and the 4th Pipe Company that the 3 million taels of silver was only a matter of a word between Magistrate Yang and the 4th Pipe Company. There was no need to pay back any taxes at all. That was why he had pushed the matter to Magistrate Yang without any pressure. Otherwise, with his character, he would have saved so many people and women today, and even put in so much effort to think of a way out for them, right? In the silence, the maidservant had arranged everything properly. But in the evening, the barracks welcomed an unexpected and yet unexpected guest. At this time, Peng Xiao was in the commander-in-chief's tent, meeting Mu Jinghu, who was carrying a bag of clothes. This was made by your wife. She said that it's spring and the weather has changed. She was afraid that you would be too hot wearing the previous clothes. After stuffing the bag to Pang Xiao, Mu Jinghu turned around and poured himself a big bowl of tea. He drank it in big mouthfuls, wiped his mouth and said, do you have anything else you want me to bring for you? Pang Xiao lovingly stroked the dark blue bag, thinking that after Mu Jinghu left, he would examine it carefully. Perhaps Sister Yi had sent him a letter inside. Hearing this, he only smiled and said, I don't have anything worth bringing, a group of rough men, and there's no bazaar or anything like that. There's nothing that she can use. You go back and help me send a message, send my regards to the mother and son. Mu Jinghu nodded understandingly, I know you miss her a lot. Pang Xiao burst out laughing, you blockhead, you've actually learned to say such things. He nudged Mu Jinghu with his shoulder, how is it, do you already have a woman in mind? Mu Jinghu's fair face instantly turned red, what are you saying? I'm not that kind of person. I'm leaving. As he spoke, he turned and walked out. Pang Xiao laughed loudly, don't, I'm just teasing you. Besides, you're not young anymore, you've reached the age of marriage. Why can't I ask? Aren't we still brothers? Mu Jinghu was thin-skinned, and was embarrassed by Pang Xiao's teasing. He lowered his head and ran out, thinking to himself that he shouldn't have volunteered to help pass the message. If it wasn't for the fact that it was already dark, his qigong was outstanding, and his speed was faster, and he hadn't seen Pang Xiao for a long time, he wouldn't have come at all. Mu Jinghu, who was running out with his head down, made Pang Xiao laugh loudly, and even Huzi pursed his lips to stifle his laughter, making a pft sound. At this moment, a servant came in to reporting to Wang Yi, there's someone outside asking to see you, claiming to be the manager of 4 Tong shop. Pang Xiao stopped smiling, raised his eyebrows and laughed lightly, you're finally here. Please come in. Mu Jinghu also stopped in his tracks, hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked back to Pang Xiao's side. Pang Xiao said mischievously, you're not leaving. Mu Jinghu said with a wooden face, I'm also curious about who this manager of 4 Tong shop is. Besides, if the other party brings an assassin, I can help you. I'm not leaving, I'll leave after I've seen what's going on. Pang Xiao kindly held back his laughter, afraid that Mu Jinghu would be so angry that he wouldn't want to come again. That wouldn't be fun. Alright, I need your help too. Pang Xiao and Mu Jinghu returned to the tent first, and handed the bundle that Mu Jinghu brought over to Huzi to keep properly. Not long after, there was a sound of footsteps outside the tent, followed by a soldier's report. Wang Yi, the manager of Four Tong Shop, is here. Please come in. The curtain was lifted, and a servant in a military uniform came in first, gesturing to the person behind him to enter. Then came a tall woman, dressed in a white brocade robe and a silver cloak, dressed in men's clothing. There were two people beside her. One was a young and pretty servant girl, and the other was someone that Pang Xiao had met before. It was Mr. Liu, who went to ask Pang Xiao to repay his debt. Qiu Feishan walked into the tent, not pretending to be a man because she was dressed in men's clothing, but her actions were natural and graceful, very elegant. There was a kind of beauty that transcended gender, and Qiu Feishan was such a person. People would overlook her attire, and although they knew that she was a woman, they would not pay attention to her gender, and would only think that this person was a gentle and elegant person. Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows, and smiled gently. Manager Qiu, please sit. Qiu Feishan smiled, and bowed. Thank you, Wang Yi. Then she found a place to sit, and the servant girl and Mr. Liu stood behind her. At this time, Huzi and Mu Jinghu showed a surprised expression. Because when these people came in, their attention was on Mr. Liu, and they all thought that Mr. Liu was the manager of Four Store. Huzi even scolded Mr. Liu in his heart for being shameless. Last time, he even pretended to be a small manager to ask Wang Yi to repay his debt. Who would have thought that the manager of Four Store, which was 100 years old, would be a beautiful young woman? The two did not hide their surprise. Huzi could not help but compare this manager Qiu with Wang Fei in his heart. And this person was neither a man nor a woman, and could not compare to Wang Fei. Although their aura was very strong, and they were all outstanding women, but he believed that Wang Yi would not be attracted to this kind of woman. Mu Jinghu did not think as much as Huzi. He only glanced at Qiu Feishan, and then looked away. Although he was curious, he knew who she was at first glance. He did not keep looking at her just because she was a beauty. Qiu Feishan saw the reaction of the two people beside Pang Xiao, and felt that Pang Xiao was an interesting person. He was interesting, and the people around him were also very interesting. The servant brought the tea and retreated. Pang Xiao leaned on the back of the chair and sighed softly. If it wasn't for Manager Qiu's visit, this king would have planned to rest. These days, suppressing the bandits was really tiring, and this king's bones are sore. Tsk, tisk. Qiu Feishan's expression did not change, but the maidservant and manager behind her were so angry that their faces turned red. He still had the nerve to say that suppressing the bandits made his bones sore. He was clearly tired from robbing Si Tong shop. And he was still Wang Yi. They had never seen such a shameless person. Qiu Feishan nodded and sighed. The peace of this land is all thanks to Wang Yi and the army. We merchants are very grateful. If it wasn't for the army's efforts to eliminate the bandits, wouldn't the surrounding people suffer? These bandits have harmed people. Our Four Store is deeply touched. Between her words, she unceremoniously scolded a certain person's banditry. The two people behind Qiu Feishan looked refreshed. This time, it was Huzi and Mu Jinghu's turn to have ugly expressions. Who would have thought that such a beautiful young lady would be so shameless, daring to call their army bandits? Why didn't she think of who was the one acting shamelessly, giving the army an IOU of 3 million taels of silver? The army paid the army, and did not even have 10,000 taels of silver. She had the nerve to write 3 million taels of silver, simply shameless. Huzi was filled with righteous indignation, and Mu Jinghu was also frowning. But the smile on Pang Xiao's face did not change, and he nodded. Yes, it's rare for Manager Qiu to understand. We eat the army's food, so of course we have to think about the safety of the people. We can't eat the army's food for free. I see that there are a lot of bandits around the capital, and the army will continue to work hard to suppress the bandits. Sooner or later, the bandits will be wiped out, and sooner or later it will be over. The maidservant behind Qiu Feishan almost fainted. Mr. Lu's face was also ashen. Chapter 7:16. Qiu Feishan also understood the meaning of his words, and said with a smile, "With Wang Yi wholeheartedly serving the people, we can rest assured. Today, I came to visit Wang Yi because we will all be living in the same place in the future, so we should at least get to know each other. Secondly, I have something to ask Wang Yi for help." As she said this, Qiu Feishan stretched out her hand. When the maid saw this, she reluctantly took out a wooden box from her bosom and handed it to Qiu Feishan. Qiu Feishan stood up, and placed the wooden box on the table in front of Pang Xiao with both hands. She bowed and said, "Wang Yi, today this little girl wants to ask Wang Yi to help our Four Links shop while suppressing the bandits. Because of the rampant bandits, the goods of the Four Links shop have been continuously stolen for a long time, causing great economic losses. Our Four Links shop can't operate anymore. I know that my request is somewhat difficult, but seeing that the Four Links shop has always been enthusiastic merchants for the country, and has also made a certain contribution to the army, I ask Wang Yi to help us." Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows, and looked at the wooden box on the table. Qiu Feishan opened the wooden box, and inside was a stack of banknotes, with a face value of 1,000 taels of silver. These are banknotes that can be exchanged on site, and there are a total of 100 banknotes. Although Wang Ye's army never took a needle or a piece of thread from the common people, suppressing the bandits was a big matter. After all, the people and horses needed to eat, and they couldn't let the brothers protect the safety of the common people on an empty stomach. This is a small gift, just to let the brothers eat some thin porridge. I ask Wang Yi to kindly accept it. Oh, that's right, the debt between the Four Links shop and your army will also be written off. The soldiers protect the country, and us useless merchants will donate some military provisions to everyone. It is also something that should be shared. Qiu Feishan was still elegant and gentle, her words were polite, and her posture was also low, but looking at her expression, there was no servile attitude, as if nobility was something engraved in her bones. It made people feel that this kind of begging attitude was not annoying, but rather admirable. Pang Xiao closed the wooden box and pretended to be deep in thought. "Well, it's not difficult to protect the Four Ports cargo team. All right, this king agrees to your request. I didn't expect the Four Ports to be such a loyal merchant. This king will report this matter to your majesty and reward the Four Ports." Qiu Feishan smiled and bowed. "Thank you, Wang Yi." "Shopkeeper Qiu, you don't have to be so polite. The army and the people should be one family." Pang Xiao laughed heartily and said in a bureaucratic tone. The two of them sat down again and started chatting. Qiu Feishan complimented Pang Xiao's glorious military exploits. Pang Xiao was modest. It was the duty of a soldier. Pang Xiao praised the Four Ports' extensive business. Qiu Feishan modestly said that it was the protection of her ancestors. Qiu Feishan also praised Pang Xiao's righteous actions during the disaster relief. Pang Xiao righteously said that it was for the sake of serving the people. Pang Xiao also praised Qiu Feishan for taking care of the Four Ports at such a young age. Qiu Feishan, in turn, said that it was not as good as Wang Yi taking care of the entire army. The people who followed them on both sides were amazed. They didn't think that there were so many words of praise in the world. They also didn't think that the other side's face was so thick. After shaking hands, compliments came out of her mouth without any hesitation. Moreover, the compliments were very accurate, making people feel comfortable. "Huzi, what a shameless woman. She can't be compared to our Wang Fei. She's so slippery. Maidservant, what a shameless scoundrel. She's simply a ruffian in the marketplace. She can actually be Wang Yi. Is the heavens blind? Mu Jinghu was thinking about how to describe the shopkeeper of Four Ports to Qin Yining. His ability to express himself was slightly weaker. The conversation ended in a happy atmosphere. When Qiu Feishan got up to leave, Peng Zhao's words had already upgraded to a righteous merchant for the country and the people. When Qiu Feishan left the barracks, the moon was already high in the sky. The night of the early spring was still very cold. The cold moonlight sprinkled a layer of soft light on her brocade cloak. Qiu Feishan walked in front as usual. The little maidservant beside her was filled with righteous indignation. Miss, why did you give money to the surnamed Yun? He's just a bandit, a robber. He's just a bumpkin, how can he be worthy of Miss Bai Ying? Shut up. Qiu Feishan gently reprimanded. Bai Ying hurriedly shut her mouth and lowered her head, not daring to speak anymore. Mr. Liu asked, Mississippi, since you're so fond of Pang Zhishi, you must have a plan for the next step, right? What he didn't ask was that ever since Four Ports started doing business, they had never suffered such a big setback. The losses they caused in the old capital were huge. They were afraid that when they returned, they would be punished by their old masters sooner or later. They didn't expect that after such a big incident, Qiu Feishan could still remain calm. Not only did she not fight with Pang Xiao and the army, she even took the initiative to send money to buy the army's protection. If this matter was known by their old masters, the consequences would be unimaginable. Qiu Feishan smiled and said lightly, you don't have to worry. In fact, I still have another plan. When I left, my old masters told me to do something else. I think it's almost done. Oh. What plan? Qiu Feishan smiled and looked at Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu immediately lowered his head and didn't dare to ask another question. However, his master had lost so much money, yet she was still so happy. It seemed that this matter was more important than the money. Or perhaps, she purposely wanted to pay this sum of money. When Mu Jinghu returned to Qin Manor, it was already the middle of the night. He wanted to tell Qin Yining about Qiu Feishan, but was afraid of disturbing Qin Yining's rest, so he could only give up. In fact, Qin Yining didn't sleep well at all. Last night, the two children had a slight fever. She, Bing Tang, and the wet nurse took turns to look after them. It wasn't until dawn that the children's fever subsided and she was able to sleep peacefully. Because she was worried about Zhao Gu and Han Gu, Qin Yining only slept for 2 hours before she got up to check on their condition. When she heard the servant girl report that Mu Jinghu wanted to see her, Qin Yining was a little surprised. Mu Jinghu wouldn't easily come to her place to see her. Ever since Pang Xiao asked Mu Jinghu to protect the manor, Mu Jinghu rarely went out. He was a little reclusive and didn't like to walk around the manor. He liked to find a spacious and empty place to practice his swordsmanship. Otherwise, he would hole up in the outer courtyard studying, drink tea and read books to pass the day. Since he took the initiative to look for her today, something must have happened in the military camp last night. Qin Yining rubbed her sore forehead and hurriedly said, "Invite Mr. Mu in." Not long after, Mu Jinghu quickly walked in. Seeing the dark circles under Qin Yining's eyes, he couldn't help but ask straightforwardly, "You didn't sleep well last night?" "Yes, the two children had a low fever, so I didn't sleep either." When he heard that it was about the two children, Mu Jinghu couldn't help but panic. They were only 2 months old and their bodies were small and soft. Last time, Peng Xiao asked him to hold them, but he didn't dare to touch them. What if something happened to them because of the low fever? Then what about now? Has the fever subsided? I still have some medicine from Martial Uncle, can you see if they need it? Seeing Mu Jinghu so anxious, Qin Yining couldn't help but feel grateful. Mu Jinghu was a righteous and pure person. He didn't beat around the bush and had an upright character. He was a man of his words. She had avoided danger several times because of Mu Jinghu's help. Although the Tianjizi always did some infuriating things, they were indebted to Mu Jinghu. Qin Yining said gratefully, "Don't worry, they are much better now. Their fever is no longer high, and the wet nurse has carried them to sleep." Mu Jinghu finally relaxed and nodded, "That's good. Peng Zhishi is also thinking about you in the military camp. If he finds out that the children are sick, I'm afraid he will be distracted." "Oh right, I went to deliver those things last night." Meng Zhishi liked them very much. She touched the bundle a few times and didn't open it in front of me. I think she planned to secretly look at them by herself. Mu Jinghu used such a straightforward tone to say such words that made Qin Yining embarrassed. However, he was too straightforward and didn't have any other intentions. Qin Yining could only cough dryly and nod, "Thank you very much." "You're welcome." Mu Jinghu said, "Oh yes, there's one more thing. I met the manager of Sidong's shop last night." Qin Yining's expression immediately turned serious when he heard this. "Where did you meet him? What kind of person was he?" "He was a woman. He was tall and dressed in men's clothes. I think I saw him with Magistrate Yang before. She brought 2 men to the military camp to meet Peng Zhishi and even tried to bribe him." Mu Jinghu recounted the events of last night in detail. In the end, he said, "I don't think that woman is easy to deal with. After suffering such a huge loss, she was still able to give gifts to Peng Zhishi without batting an eyelid. She didn't even mention that Peng Zhishi had robbed her of Sidong shop's goods. Instead, she said that she wanted to pay Peng Zhishi money to protect her caravan. She is not simple and she is deliberately targeting you. You have to be careful." Qin Yining nodded, "I understand. Thank you very much." "You're welcome. What I mean is, you have to be careful too." Qin Yining blinked his eyes in confusion, "What?" Mu Jinghu coughed and said, "Actually, I shouldn't be saying this. However, I think that Manager Chiu is quite good-looking. After suffering such a huge loss, she was still willing to give Peng Zhishi money. Perhaps she has taken a liking to Peng Zhishi. You only know how to take care of the children and take care of the household. Don't let others stab you in the back if you don't pay attention." Qin Yining couldn't help but be surprised and grateful when he heard this. He joked, "Aren't you Peng Zhishi's good brother? People say that it's very normal for a man to have multiple wives. Why do you only know to remind me to be careful?" Chapter 717. She didn't expect Mu Jinghu to think this way. Qin Yining couldn't help but smile and say, "Mr. Mu is such a considerate person. If you get married in the future, your wife will be blessed." Mu Jinghu's face immediately turned red. He secretly wondered why Peng Zhishi's wife was the same as him. They both liked to tease others. He stood up and said awkwardly, "If there's nothing else, I'll leave." Without waiting for Qin Yining to say anything, Mu Jinghu turned and left. Qin Yining looked at his back and couldn't help but think of an appropriate word to describe him: fleeing. It was really interesting. Tianjizi was such a sly and cunning person, but her martial nephew had such a character. Qin Yining was now really curious about what kind of person their master was, to be able to teach such a person with such a different character. However, thinking about Mu Jinghu's reminder and recalling the day she saw Qiu Feishan at Magistrate Yang's residence, she had to admit that the other party was indeed a beauty that people couldn't help but pay attention to. It was no wonder that Mu Jinghu would remind her. However, she believed in Pang Zhao's character. She was also willing to believe in Pang Zhao's love for her. However, Qin Yining had another idea. Sometimes, if a man wanted to have a change of heart, it proved that he was that kind of person. There were many men in the world who loved every woman they met. If she really met such a person, she was afraid that there was no other way. She had already given birth to twins for Pang Xiao. If Pang Xiao took a concubine, could she stop him? In other words, would it be useful for her to stop him? When the time came, she was afraid that the strong feelings would turn cold and there would be another way to live. Thinking of this, Qin Yining's mood inexplicably became a little depressed. However, after being depressed for a moment, she felt that she was a little ridiculous. She started to feel sad about something that hadn't happened yet. Wasn't she looking for trouble for herself? Qin Yining's mood brightened up, and he went to the back room to look after the two children. After confirming that the two little ones' fever had completely subsided and they were fine, Ji Yun smiled and said, "Princess consort, quickly go and rest. You didn't sleep last night. There's still Bing Tang. You all go back and rest. There are still a few of us here." Lian Xiaozhou also nodded at Qin Yining's bruised eyes. "Sister, go to sleep. If you don't sleep, you'll become ugly." Lian Xiaozhou could speak normally now. After being taught by Bing Tang, she even learned a bit of Bing Tang's mischievousness. In addition, she was close to Qin Yining and treated her as her older sister. Naturally, she didn't have as many considerations as the other maidservants. "You little girl, now that you've become ugly, Wang Yi doesn't want me anymore. In the future, I'll go to your house to eat." She scratched the tip of Lian Xiaozhou's nose. "When you get married, won't your husband be annoyed to death?" Lian Xiaozhou's face instantly turned as red as an apple. She pushed Qin Yining out and said, "Sister, you're not a good person." Qin Yining couldn't stop laughing. Now that the child's illness was cured, the big stone in her heart also disappeared. She went back to her room and fell asleep. However, Qin Yining was too heavy. In the afternoon, Jing Zhi came back and wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Xian Yun. "Princess consort, you didn't sleep last night taking care of the young master. Now that you've finally fallen asleep, if there's nothing urgent, we'll talk about it when Princess consort wakes up." Jing Zhi thought about it. He had been investigating shopkeeper Xia for a few days, and he didn't need to wait for more information. He went back to take a bath and rest. In the evening, after Qin Yining woke up and had dinner, Jing Zhi came to see her. Qin Yining hurriedly ordered someone to invite him in. Jing Zhi bowed to Qin Yining and said in a low voice, "Princess consort, I've been investigating the situation in the fields these past few days. The people on the fields and the tenant farmers have always been grateful to you and have never forgotten about you. In addition, you later said that you would waive their rent for a year, so they are even more grateful to you. As for shopkeeper Xia, this subordinate did find out that there was something unusual about him. He had secretly seen Mr. Liu, who was in contact with the four-way shop, a few times. I've asked around carefully. It seems that the grains produced by the fields and some of the businesses in the shops have all been in cooperation with the four-way shop. The four-way shop is a big business and has deep roots in the old capital. They have a wide range of businesses. Shopkeeper Xia deliberately curried favor with them, and Mr. Liu of the four-way shop also deliberately befriended them. Gradually, the two parties became familiar with each other." Qin Yining nodded. He wasn't surprised by this news at all. Master Zhong was a cautious person. Although they had left the old capital in a hurry, Master Zhong would have arranged everything properly. Someone who could gain his approval and be appointed as the shopkeeper definitely wouldn't be like what she saw now. Therefore, the only thing that could make shopkeeper Xia become like this during this period of time was an external force. There must be something he was relying on. She had originally guessed that shopkeeper Xia was relying on Yu Qiyan and Gu Shixiang. However, it was also reasonable to say that it was the wealthy and overbearing four-way shop. No wonder he was so arrogant. Qin Yining laughed coldly. So it's because he has the century-old four-way shop as his backing. His entire body is trembling. That's right. This subordinate has been around shopkeeper Xiao's house these past few days, and I've heard shopkeeper Xiao say a lot of disrespectful things about you. Jingzhi's face showed a bit of ruthlessness. He made a throat-slitting gesture. Wang Fei, do you want this subordinate to go? Qin Yining shook his head and smiled. It's fine. You don't have to do anything. I have a plan. Jingzhi knew that Qin Yining's intelligence wasn't something that a simple-minded person like him could compare to. Perhaps shopkeeper Xia still had some use for him. Thinking of this, Jingzhi respectfully bowed. Yes, Wang Fei. Don't worry. Without your orders, I won't act rashly. It's been hard on you this time. I'm lucky to have trusted people like you by my side. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what to do with each step that was bumpy. Jingzhi hurriedly bowed and said, Wang Fei, you don't have to be so polite. This subordinate's life was saved by you. If you hadn't thought of a plan at the time, your Majesty would have already captured me and beheaded me. You treat this subordinate with affection and righteousness. This subordinate will definitely repay you with loyalty. It's just spying and spying. It's not like the incapable emperor would order us to risk our lives for him. These are all trivial matters to this subordinate. Qin Yining expressed his gratitude again before allowing Jingzhi to leave to rest. When she was the only one left in the room, Qin Yining's smile was gradually replaced by a thoughtful expression. In the past, she had thought that the people who had opposed her and Pang Shao in the old capital had all been ordered by the Yuchi Yen. Even the four-way shop had caused such a big trouble for Pang Shao in the military. It was probably to curry favor with the Yuchi Yen. However, after such a long period of observation and investigation, as well as the analysis of various signs, Qin Yining now felt that the four-way shop might not be relying on the Yuchi Yen. Behind the four-way shop, there should be a person or family that was more powerful than the Yuchi Yen behind it. The four-way shop was an old business that had been passed down for more than 100 years. On the surface, it seemed to have financial resources and connections. However, no matter how powerful it was still just a merchant. No matter if it was Beiji, the Dayan of the previous dynasty, or the current Dezhou. When the world was in chaos, merchants might be able to earn money, but power was always above wealth. Even if they had a lot of wealth, if they didn't have a strong backer, wouldn't they be targeted by wolves, tigers, and leopards a long time ago and be divided up? She thought that there must be a very powerful backer behind the four-way shop. Moreover, this backer must be someone who didn't get along with Pang Shao. Otherwise, why would the four-way shop interfere with everything they did when they came to the old capital? The four-way shop played tricks on Pang Shao in the military camp, and bribed her shopkeeper here. It was obvious that they were targeting her and her husband. Thinking about it, the four-way shop itself was a merchant, so it shouldn't be so crazy as to insist on competing with Wang Yi. Then, the reason why the four-way shop was acting like this should be because they were taking orders from someone. Qin Yining had a strong curiosity about the person behind the four-way shop. She really wanted to see who exactly was targeting her and Pang Shao and trying to kill them. Qin Yining didn't tell Pang Shao that the two children were sick. However, Pang Shao still found out. The next morning, Pang Shao whipped his horse and rushed back home. He went straight to the bedroom of the main house. Xian Yun came out of the inner room with a tray. When she raised her head, she saw Pang Shao striding over. The black cloak behind him spread out in a fan-shaped arc. Wang Yi. Xian Yun bowed, then turned around and said, "Princess consort, Wang Yi is back." When Lian Xiaozhou and Ji Yun heard this, they immediately took the initiative to lift the curtain for Pang Shao. Pang Shao casually threw the cloak and horsewhip to the side. He first stood in front of the stove in the outer room and stretched out his hands to warm himself. He was afraid that his body would be too cold and the three babies in the room would be cold. As he warmed himself by the fire, Pang Xiao whispered, "How is the family these days?" "Wang Yi, don't worry. Everything in the Fu is fine." The young master was a little feverish before, but he's fine now. Qin Yining and Bing Tang were coaxing the children with the wet nurse in the room. When they heard Pang Xiao's voice outside, they looked at each other and laughed. "Wang Yi." Qin Yining lifted the curtain between the inner room and the outer room. He tilted his head and smiled at Pang Xiao. "Why is Wang Yi back?" When Pang Xiao saw Qin Yining, he couldn't help but laugh. Qin Yining wore a light pink jacket and a light yellow horseface skirt. Her long hair was loosely tied into a bun at the back of her head. Pearl tassels swayed gently on her temples. She was still bright and beautiful without any makeup. Wife was as beautiful as a painting. Looking at her made one feel happy. "It's nothing. I came home to see you. Don't you miss me?" "I don't. I think you miss Han Gu and Zhao Gu. Qin Yining turned his head and shook Zhao Gu's left hand in Bing Tang's arms. "Isn't that right, Zhao Gu? Let's see if Papa still recognizes Papa." There was a small bell hanging from the silver bracelet on Zhao Gu's wrist. When he shook it, it made a crisp sound. Zhao Gu didn't know how to speak. He made an unclear sound and spat out a transparent bubble. Chapter 7:18. Brother Zhao was stunned for a moment when he suddenly fell into Pang Zhao's firm arms. Before he could cry, his cheeks were rubbed against. It was an unfamiliar scent and an unfamiliar person. Brother Zhao kicked his short legs and huffed in dissatisfaction. Pang Xiao suddenly felt something warm on his stomach. He didn't notice it at first until the wet nurse cried out in shock, "He peed." The young master peed. "Don't make a fuss." Pang Xiao lowered his voice and scolded, "If he peed, he peed. Don't make a fuss. I'm happy to ask my son to pee. Let him finish peeing. Don't scare the child." Pang Xiao hugged Brother Zhao and stood there to accept the baptism of the boy's urine. Qin Yining couldn't help but chuckle when he saw this. He hurriedly called for someone to come in, quickly prepare a hot bath for Wang Yi. Also, prepare clean clothes. Pang Xiao hugged Brother Zhao who had just finished peeing and said happily, "My son knows that I'm cold and is warming me up. Isn't that right, Brother Zhao?" Brother Zhao pursed his lips. The small red mole between his eyebrows made him look as white and cute as a porcelain doll. He looked around with his grape-like big eyes and refused to look at Pang Xiao. He gave face and didn't cry. Qin Yining took Brother Zhao and handed him to the wet nurse. He helplessly looked at Pang Xiao, who was wearing wet clothes and smelling of urine, and went to play with Brother Han. "Wang Yi, quickly wash up. Aren't you afraid that the child will dislike you? Isn't it because of them?" Pang Xiao lowered his head and looked at the front of his clothes. A large wet area had turned cold and was still dripping with water. "It's fine. Boy's urine is good stuff. Your son is full of good stuff. Quickly go wash up." Qin Yining pushed Pang Xiao into the bathroom. The wet nurse and Bing Tang carefully wrapped the two children in swaddling clothes and went to the warm room opposite the door. Qin Yining prepared a change of clothes for Pang Xiao and placed them on the screen. With a smile, he chatted with Pang Xiao in the cleaning room. "I heard from young Master Mu that the silver issue has been resolved." "That's right. Yesterday, head shopkeeper Chiu came to see me. He gave her a box of banknotes. The debt of 3 million taels has also been written off. Looks like our plan is working. In the end, it has affected the four-way shop's business. Even the head shopkeeper has been forced out." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Didn't she tactfully express her intention to help the army when she was in Magistrate Yang's residence?" I don't think she's at a disadvantage this time. Maybe they're trying to get a foothold in the military. Qin Yining was stunned when he heard this. His movements of tidying his clothes slowed down as he carefully recalled the series of events that had happened since he came to the old capital. Qiu Feishan took advantage of Magistrate Yang's family banquet and deliberately made friends with them. Without revealing her identity, she tactfully proposed to provide money to the army. Before this, the four-way shop had placed people in the army and deliberately made the army owe money, forcing Pang Xiao to take an unconventional approach to solve the problem. She used to think that the other party was targeting Pang Xiao. But after hearing Pang Xiao's words, she suddenly felt enlightened. Perhaps the other party was not simply trying to make things difficult for Pang Xiao, but there was someone behind them who wanted to get a foothold in the military. Although Pang Xiao was now the commander-in-chief of the army, he held the military power in his hands and gradually gathered the morale of the army. But his biggest shortcoming was that he really did not have any money. The imperial court did not allocate funds, and there were no local taxes. How could he let the soldiers go hungry? If they did not want to cause a mutiny and give Li Qitian something to use against them, they must keep the old capital stable and peaceful. Qin Yining would not forget that they came this time to stabilize the situation in the south and not let Dezhou in both the north and the south at the same time. In order to maintain stability, Pang Xiao had to get money. In order to get money, he must have a relationship with the four-way shop. Now it seemed that if the purpose of the four-way shop was really to get a foothold in the army and inject money, then they had already done it. Moreover, it was something that Pang Xiao had no choice but to accept. With this understanding, Qin Yining only felt more and more sullen. He was even more curious about the person behind the four-way shop. She held Pang Xiao's undergarment and fell into deep thought, not noticing that Pang Xiao was already standing beside her. He had a towel wrapped around his waist, and his hair was still dripping water. The lines of his strong muscles were smooth and strong, and the water droplets at the tip of his hair slid down his shoulder blades and meandered across his firm chest before finally disappearing into the towel tied around his waist. Sister Yi. His large hand held her shoulder and pulled her towards him. What are you thinking about? Qin Yining only came back to her senses when her shoulder was held. She raised her eyes and met Pang Xiao's gaze, which was as gentle as water. She couldn't help but indulge in his gaze, temporarily forgetting all the thoughts in her mind. Don't worry, I will take care of these things. Pang Xiao looked at her eyes that were as clear as water. This woman could move his heart at any time. The way she looked at him was the same as when they first got together. She was always so focused, and her love almost overflowed from her eyes. His long arms pulled Qin Yining into his embrace and left countless kisses on her long hair and temples. His voice was low and hoarse. Let me take a good look at you. Qin Yining's face flushed red, but ever since they got married, they had been apart more than together. It was not easy for him to come home, so Qin Yining cherished the time she could spend with him. Even though it was broad daylight and she was very shy, she still let him do as he pleased. The servants tacitly moved away, and each of them had an ambiguous smile on their faces, leaving the two of them alone. When Qin Yining woke up again, it was already past noon. As soon as she opened her eyes, she met Pang Xiao's smiling eyes. He was wearing a snow-white undergarment and was lying on his side on the edge of the bed. He was playing with her long hair, and she did not know how long he had been staring at her. When did you wake up? Qin Yining lazily turned over and rolled into Pang Xiao's arms. Pang Xiao hugged her with a smile and kissed her smooth shoulder. I didn't get up for long. It's more comfortable to be at home. The bed in the military camp is as hard as a rock. Even if I fall asleep, it won't relieve my tiredness. Moreover, the military camp is chaotic, so I don't dare to sleep properly. When Qin Yining heard this, she could not help but feel sorry for him. She sat up and touched his smooth and handsome face. If I had known, I would have thought of a way to bring you some bedding. At the very least, I would have sent someone to take care of your daily life. Pang Xiao knew that Qin Yining would feel sorry for her. Sometimes, when he encountered a huge problem, he was unwilling to tell her even if he had to suffer. But sometimes, even though there was nothing wrong, he liked to become the pitiful little boy in her heart like today. He felt that being able to have her love and care was the most satisfying thing in the world. In fact, even if he was stabbed by a knife, he might not even make a sound. How can that be? That's the military camp, not some other place. It's not good to have this kind of special treatment. Pang Xiao deliberately made a bitter face to tease her. Qin Yining grabbed her inner garment and sat up. She thought about how to let Pang Xiao eat well and sleep well in the military camp. Pang Xiao also got up. He watched her frown as she racked her brains, as if she had encountered a huge problem. His heart had long melted into a puddle of water. He hugged her and laughed softly. Qin Yining patted his large hand that refused to be obedient. Then, she realized what he was doing. Pang Xiao was deliberately teasing her. But she also knew that in the military camp, he would definitely eat from the same pot and sleep on a hard bed. Pang Xiao did not like to enjoy special treatment. When he killed the enemy, he would charge at the front. He also treated the soldiers equally. He would not hide and give them special treatment. He would not let the soldiers under him think that he was a delicate woman who was picky. I haven't held the children today and I haven't fed them breast milk. It's all your fault. Okay. It's my fault. Be good and go to sleep. Anyway, they have a wet nurse to take care of them. They won't starve. Thinking about Pang Xiao's various bad behaviors, Qin Yining's cheeks burned red. She turned over and hugged the quilt, not wanting to talk to him. But he was too nosy and she fell asleep again. Pang Xiao hugged her waist from behind with satisfaction and snuggled her into his arms. Then, he seriously thought about the problem of the four-way shop. Like Qin Yining, Pang Xiao didn't think that a big business that had been operating for more than 100 years wouldn't have the support of a big family. Maybe, the backer of the four-way shop was a big family like the Lu family. He killed many enemies on the battlefield and always took the blame for Li Qitian. To be honest, he couldn't remember how many people he had killed outside. In the past, he was alone and his thoughts were very simple. Anyway, he would block soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. Whatever tricks they had, they would come at him. He wasn't afraid. If there was a problem, he would solve it. But now, he was more and more worried. He also experienced Qin Yining being kidnapped to have a Taiden, so he was even more worried. He was really worried that because of him, outsiders would be attracted and it would be disadvantageous to Qin Yining. What kind of family was behind the four-way shop? This family was not easy to investigate, but the four-way shop was easy to investigate. It was said that it originated from Gainan Prefecture. They could start the investigation from Gainan Prefecture. Pang Xiao hugged the person in his arms tightly. His gaze became more resolute. If they wanted to deal with him, he wasn't a soft persimmon that could be easily squashed. This time, it seemed like he won with the four-way shop, but the four-way shop might have also achieved its goal. This could only be considered a win-win situation. Moreover, he was passive in this kind of cooperation. He remembered this debt and hadn't settled it yet. Then, he would slowly settle it in the future. Wang Yi, please calm down. Gu Shixiang persuaded Yu Qi-yen helplessly. He said softly, the four-way shop isn't satisfied with the way we do things. It's normal that Mr. Lu won't see us this time. In the future, we just have to do our jobs well. Wang Yi, why are you so angry? Yu Yen frowned. His face was red as if someone had slapped him hard. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. This is the first time in this king's life that he's been so humble. I'm the king of a country, but I have to suffer such humiliation. Yu Yen waved his hand and swept away the neatly arranged books on the bookshelf. He was so angry that he wanted to tear Mr. Liu into pieces. He was an emperor, but his dignity was being trampled on by a small merchant.